Hi guys, we're live. Yeah.
With Covermore Travel Insurance, we give you all the care in the world, so you won't have a care in the world.
When we touch here, just try this later again. Oh, that feels nice, yeah? That's good. So just do that because it feels comforting. Because when you were a baby, your mother held you in her arms and she touched you here and it
Hey, Gigabyte, good to see you.
Delta.
Atlantis in America, a story told by David Carrico and Brian Rees. Atlantis, in a world where the past holds secrets and mysteries to be uncovered about the truth. This is the story of two brave adventurers who must expose the lies and overcome impossible odds to uncover the secrets of Atlantis and its connection to America. As the two men embark on their journey, they are faced with challenges at every turn. From the made-up stories of academia, they must use all of their skills and cunning to survive. But as they delve deeper into the unknown, they begin to uncover a sinister plot that threatens human history. With time running out and the stakes higher than ever, our two explorers must summon all of their courage and strength to face their greatest challenge yet. There will be scoffers and persecution and dangers that lie ahead. This epic broadcast of adventure and suspense will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end. Filled with action, intrigue, and heart-pounding suspense, this is a broadcast that you will keep on repeat. Subscribe and hit that like button for this epic broadcast. Join us for a story that has never been told throughout the ages on June 4th, 2023.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to FOJC Radio Sunday Night Live. My great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to this broadcast. And going into this broadcast this evening, which is entitled Atlantis in America, we have two main objectives. Number one, to kick the devil's butt. And number two, to chew bubblegum. And I just have to tell y'all tonight, we are completely out of bubblegum. And we're going to have to focus on objective number one. And that's what we're going to do. And that's going to be fine with my co-host for this evening, the master of visual disturbance himself, Mr. Brian Rees. Brian, it's good to be live on Atlantis in America.
Glad to be here, David. God bless you, my friend. Such a good time to be here this day and age in 2023, talking about this interesting topic on Atlantis in America. Everybody, if you haven't got an opportunity, if you just now joined us on Rumble, hit that Rumble button, hit all the links in the description, check out all the work that David and Donna have done on FOJC. And it's such a pleasure to be here tonight. And we're going to be riding this thing for a couple hours, Atlantis in America. And we're going to be exposing the stuff that has been just covered up for on an archaeology standpoint, on megalithic sites and ancient languages. I mean, this is going to be a home run broadcast, and I'm just glad to be part of it, David.
And one of the subject of Atlantis is one of that. I don't care if you're a believer or a non-believer, there's something within the heart of people that you just know this is true. That there was at one time this ancient, tremendously advanced civilization that was completely destroyed. And this was a civilization that was over the entire earth And we're going to be showing just facts that cannot be denied. And always, whenever we bring forth the truth of the Word of God and the truth that we see in history, we find we're swimming against the narrative that is popular put forth by the institutions that want to cover up the truth. So it's going to be an exciting broadcast. And yeah, I guess we might as well get to work.
Absolutely, David. Here we go. So the first thing tonight we're going to be talking about, we're going to take a deep dive in some literature and some old books. And the first one on the ballot here, we have the Britannica Volume 7, great books of Plato. And we could sit right here and just on this one book alone, we could set up the whole broadcast because there's a endless amount of data that's highly compelling for this topic on Atlantis in America. And like I say all the time on my Visual Disturbance channel, you just can't make this stuff up. But tonight, like David said, we're out of, how'd you say it, Dave? We got the bubble gum, but we're out of bubble gum.
We're all out of bubble gum tonight. I tell you what. So we're going to be focusing on objective number one. No bubble gum in the house.
And we're going to let the Holy Spirit guide us, and we're just blessed to do it. So
there you go. And the story of Atlantis comes from Plato. And Plato related the story, as he said, he learned it from Solon, the Egyptian scribe. And he had a lot more to say other than the story of Atlantis. And he had this. This is Plato's words. He says that
Atlantis fascinates me.
there have been and will be again many destructions of mankind, arising out of many causes. The greatest have been brought about by the agencies of fire and water, and lesser ones by the innumerable other causes. He said, after the usual interval, the stream from heaven, like a pestilence, comes pouring down. And we talked about this in the series that Tracy and I did on the planetary catastrophism. And Plato speaks of a stream from heaven that came at intervals, and many civilizations. Atlantis was destroyed. We can read in the Bible about the flood of Noah, the dispersion at Babylon. And as Plato said, he said, it comes pouring down and leaves only those of you who are destitute of letters and education. And you have to begin all over again like children and know nothing of what happened in ancient times. And for some reason, the cataclysm of Atlantis, the dispersion at the Tower of Babel, Genesis 10:25, in the days of Peleg, the earth was divided. When we have these dispersions and these cataclysms, there are certain landing spots that the people that are fleeing these cataclysms land in. And we are right in one of those right here in the Ohio Valley, here in Indiana and Kentucky, all the way over to where you live. And we're not only going to be talking about proof of this Atlantean culture being in America, but very specifically right where we live. And with Brian, I mean, it's right in his backyard, some amazing artifacts that is just astounding. We're going to be sharing with you tonight.
Yeah, I could tell you, like I've talked to you before off air, the November 2022, they literally got done excavating a mound. I mean, it's in walking distance from my neighborhood. So the baffling thing about it is the Eastern Kentucky University knew all about it. It was documented. I actually went and inquired about it. But they do not reference the Indian mounds as me and you do. I look at the giant narrative, and they excavated it, and they're putting a park over top of it and putting a neighborhood. And it's baffling to say because from my data and from my research, it would be around 12 to 15 foot tall giant that was pulled out there in the early 1900s. But it took till 2022 to excavate it and literally bulldozer it down. And now they're putting a park over top of it in the neighborhood. So these things are just unbelievable. And then you just go right across the way and there's a army depot that has Indian mounds and ancient prehistoric villages. So you can't make this stuff up, David. It literally is in my backyard.
Yeah. And I remember not too long ago, I guess it's been a few years now, when you first told me about this serpent mound that's right over there. And this is a big deal. I mean, this is a huge deal. This is one of the ancient uh, signatures of the ancient priesthood that came right down from the fallen angels themselves. And this is a big deal. And it is such an important cultural landmark. And to see why, I mean, they don't even care. You know, the people that should be caring about our history and our culture, they don't care about it. And there's a reason why, because this validates the biblical, the story of the giants, and it goes against that which they're wanting to show people. So it isn't surprising. We encounter this over and over and over again.
Absolutely, David. And you know, remember when we did the Jubilees and the Midnight Ride, when you and John asked me to be on there, he was talking about these points, these energy points. You know, we're talking about gateways, portals, etc. And you know, there's all kinds of spiritual applications going on right now in 2023 in my local area. And we're going to be getting into that serpent mound that is literally been involved in my family and everything throughout all these years, and nobody ever spoke on it. And what was so baffling, just a few miles up the road, they're having all these, we'll get into it more, maybe touch base on it, but all these gateways are opening spiritual applications with other gods. And it's not the God of you know, they're literally the God of, well, we can get into Shiva and all kinds of different things we're going to talk about later in the broadcast, but it's these little G gods are running amok. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In a bit of a mess, PinoClean has 3 times multi-action power to clean, disinfect, and freshen. It's not clean unless it's PinoClean.
They say a smile lights up the room. With Invisalign, it's like flipping a switch.
200,000 visas were issued by the Labor government just in February. That's 200.
Yeah. All righty, let's go ahead and let's put some slides up here for the folks.
The Britannica Volume 7, we went through that. Here's the next one on the Hindu statue in Kentucky.
Yeah, now this is another little amazing fact that here in the Indiana and the Kentucky area, there are Hindu statues. And in the broadcast that Tracy and I did on the Olmecs, there are statues there in the Olmec culture that look just like the Japanese sumo wrestler that are there with the Shang culture. And this shows us that we were a landing point. And the dispersion of Babel brought Hindu people, it brought Scythians, it brought many different types of people right into this area. And they were bringing with them something even older. They were bringing knowledge from the fallen angels that had been in the antediluvian world, when that world, and I think when we talk about Atlantis, we have to put it in that antediluvian period. And they were bringing that knowledge with them, knowledge that we see in cultures all over the earth, knowledge that was the foundation of the civilizations after the flood, based on this antediluvian knowledge. And much of it, it would be very safe to say it come from Atlantis, which is kind of a, I guess, a code word for that antediluvian civilization that was very advanced and covered the entire earth.
Absolutely. And then I'll kind of mention this too, with the whole Michigan copper mines, all up and down the Ohio Valley, there's an abundance of resources. And it's interesting that these Hindu statues are all over the place here. And one would have to wonder, like you're saying, this Atlantean, there's all kinds of information that is dated from all kinds of different civilizations. And one wonders, how in the world can academia cover this up? And me and you both know, but as far as the world, they have bamboozled the masses. And it's just, we're going to be exposing that through all this literature we're going to be ready to bring to the table here on this Atlantis and American episode. So it's baffling, my friend. And the Hindu culture is it's getting stronger around here. And I'm not putting down or disrespecting the people. It just makes you wonder, like I say a lot on these other broadcasts I do, Ecclesiastes, when chapter 1, verse 9, then there's nothing new under the sun. The things that have been, I mean, kind of like what he was referring to when he's reading out the Britannica with Plato. There's nothing new. And one would wonder how in the world these things have been covered up for years. But then you have these people, you have smaller little cliques of people that are, yeah, this is on my property. This has been around for a long time. It's something I played on as a kid. And it's just covered up and it's never exposed. It's never brought to light. But it's astonishing. It's astonishing, David.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm not seeing the slides here, Brian.
The slides are on they should be on the browser on that part on Rumble. But if you don't have them up, I'm on the Hindu statue.
Okay. Well, I can't see it, but that's all right. We can go ahead.
Okay.
And on this statue, you can see here, there's an indentation there where the third eye is.
Mm-hmm.
And
true.
this is another similarity in the broadcast that we did on the Olmecs. They would put this mask of the jaguar on them to purposely put an indentation there in the third eye. And they believed that this would help give the child psychic powers from a very young age. And this is another mark of the priesthood. And we're going to see that what we're dealing with here in this area was the continuation of an ancient priesthood that was diffused from the Tower of Babel. And at that dispersion there, and in the days of Peleg, when the earth was divided, they were carrying with them ancient knowledge that had been brought over from the antediluvian world and was being directly transmitted them from the fallen angels. And these civilizations were very advanced. And we think now that, boy, we're so much ahead of these people, but actually we're just playing catch up.
100% agree. And the evidence proves it. And it's just like I said a minute ago, they done a darn good job of covering it up. And this all kind of started happening around the early 1900s. And I think this has been a huge endeavor for them to really hone in and just wipe out just data beyond data and just cover it up. And then, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit later too, about, the biblical stance when it comes to the Genesis 6 narrative. You mentioned the fallen angels, the sons of God took the daughters of men and they bore giants. It's kind of interesting how the 1800s they was preaching at the pulpits, and then it just started kind of tanking around the late 1800s and the early 1900s. They doing military renaissance missions, and then here you go. It's just it's been a big cover up. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The next slide is the Frank Joseph Advanced cover with Advanced Civilizations.
Yeah. Now, in this book here by Mr. Frank Joseph, he talks here about the Kentucky Fisher site in Fayette County, where they actually had human skull bones. And as we trace this, we're going to see that this is something that came from the dispersion at Babel, that came from the Scythians. This goes all the way back to the worship of Nimrod. Nimrod was worshipped with a skull. The Knights Templar, they continued the worship of the head, which was the head became the Baphomet. And this goes back to the Scythian people. They came from the grandchildren of Noah. And we talked about these people quite a bit on the Midnight Ride. They were the people from whom the Huns came, and they were some bad dudes. And these skull bones were something that was one of their distinctives. And when you have, you wouldn't think about here in Kentucky, when you're in Indiana, when you excavate an Indian mound, that we would find this Scythian practice of killing your enemy and then making a bowl out of their head. But this is what we find here, right over in Fisher, Kentucky, and throughout this area.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have been by that mound, by that area, thousands of times when I used to do my old job. No joke. I've been by the exact same area. and it's a pretty phenomenal place. And they built around it. They built a lot of residential places around it, and it's covered up. But there's parks and everything around it. It's not the same place. It's not the same. It's kind of hard to get to, but yeah, very interesting. But yeah, between the the Celtic language found in Kentucky, the same book with advanced civilizations you talked about, and then you referred to the human skull bones. I want to get back on that because I know the slides. I thought the slides was in front of me, David, and forgive me that they're not. So everybody blame Brian. But the human skull bones found in Kentucky. Remember our conversation? We was talking about this off air. The first thing that came to mind. This is how bad we're defragmenting when it comes to Hollywood narrative. I thought of the movie Predator. I was going to put some slides up. I just thought for that, for the younger audiences, I just didn't want to put anything up like that. But it did remind me of the Predator movie series with the skulls and all that. And there's ritualistic stuff to it. And then the Predator character was 8 foot tall. I mean, and then the whole narrative with the Thunderbird narrative, there was a lot of Indian culture involvement with those movies, and they talk about the Thunderbird and look up the sky, and basically say the Thunderbirds with these flying ships. Basically, it's pretty phenomenal. A lot of that stuff. Whoever wrote that has a lot of ancient knowledge. How about that?
Yeah, and this big giant fella, they were portraying him as someone from another world.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, we could go down a big rabbit hole with that. There's a lot of three-letter agencies, a lot of documentation to do with these esoteric meanings and stuff. They talk about a planet, not as what we would say it is with the vibrational rate. I've got some old 1940s documents with aliens and stuff like that, but it's literally they blatantly come out and say it in typewriting form. Say, hey, this is literally these look like human-like people, but they're giant in stature. So, the mysteries go on and on, David.
They do indeed.
So the Celtic presence in America, we talked about that with the two of they look like Cineros from the underworld, the god of underworld. That whole celebration with that, by the way, that's just my personal opinion, but very strange.
When you spend only 0.02% of your time doing bank things, you can spend 17.5% of your time with your best friend, 5.6% taking your stress out on strangers, 10% on the arts, 38% dwelling on that terrible thing you said to your coworker at the party, and 20% baking for your colleagues at work, especially Brenda.
I'm not the one with secrets here.
I can't go on living like this.
All right, and then let's see the next one. The brooch round houses.
Now, I know that it was some time ago, Dan Bedondi drew this to our attention, and he was asking about what they were, and we really didn't know at the time. These round houses, and later we've come to discover that these were Celtic. And when we talk about the Celtic people, we're talking about those people that migrated down from, that came from the line of Gomer, and they came down from the Caucasian mountains into Galatia. They were the priests of the Gali down in the area of Asia Minor when Paul wrote the epistle to the Galatians. And then they went to Britain and they became known
Hey, Bill, good to see you, mate.
And there is just overwhelming evidence that these Celtic people, that they had come to America long before Columbus did. There's just overwhelming evidence. And there's Celtic writing, there's Celtic inscriptions. And another one of these factors are these round, they call them the Celtic brooches, these round houses that they came from the Celts, which we can still see multitudes of these that are still in Ireland.
Mm. Yeah, it reminds me too of like Lord of the Rings. You see all this stuff depicted in the little tiny homes and stuff. We've talked about that off air too, but I have I pulled it up a minute ago. It has kind of a diagram of how they're created and whatnot, how they keep them heated, and just a little small little diagram there, especially how it's just amazing how they're able to pull this endeavor off. It's amazing. The Celtic language is inundated all over Kentucky. I've looked and I've kind of done some research on it. I see them come out like of the eastern side on the south. I heard it come from like Hazard, Kentucky. There was a strong presence of Celtic. Strong in that area. I couldn't believe it, but I was listening to a thing about it with bluegrass, where the origins of bluegrass. It was amazing, David. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, that area there by the West Virginia border, right there in the Appalachian Mountains, is where so much of this is found.
I'm trying to get those slides to you, David. All right, let's see here. Okay.
Are the people seeing them all right? You seeing the slides?
Yeah, they're seeing them fine.
Okay.
Yeah, they're perfect.
All right. Well, that's all that matters. We can just roll on here.
Then we're going to read talking about the Britannica Volume 6 of the Great Books.
Now, here we're going to make a connection. We're going to read from a very, very credible source. This is the Roman historian Herodotus, and he talks about this practice of making a drinking bowl out of the head of your enemies, and that's a little bit gory. You don't get that everywhere. There's a lot of killing goes on and a lot of bad stuff, but this is a very distinctive ritual, and it comes down from ancient antediluvian paganism. It was propagated by the Scythians, who come from the grandchildren of Noah, and it was recorded by the Roman historian Herodotus. And he says this is on page 134 of the text that was referred to. He says, in what concerns war, their customs are the following. The Scythian soldier drinks the blood of the first man he overthrows in battle. Whatever number he slays, he cuts off all their heads and carries them to the king. The skulls of their enemies, not indeed of all, but of those whom they most detest, they treat as follows. Having sawn off the portion below the eyebrows and cleaned out the inside, they cover the outside with leather. When a man is poor, this is all that he does. But if he is rich, he also lines the inside with gold. In either case, the skull is used as a drinking cup. And this is something we're going to show also.
That's pretty
that this
sick.
has passed into the rituals of Freemasonry and has become a part of that Masonic ritual.
Wow. And like I was saying a minute ago, being portrayed in the movies and stuff, David, it's just, they just rub it in their faces. And this whole Mason narrative, it really baffles the mind of how sick and demented that their minds have to be to go to these lengths to do these rituals and everything. And we're literally talking about fallen angel narrative and ritualistic stuff, and one just can't even imagine. I mean, I don't. In this day and age, you don't really know how everything's headed. The way the world is going down the toilet. I hate to use that analogy, but that's what it seems like, David.
Yeah, and it's like, and people don't really get the impact. Here we have these skull bowls right here in our area, and this just isn't something that they thought of on their own. This is something that definitively was passed by this culture that settled in this area. And for Freemasons, for the rituals, and there's two rites in Freemasonry that I could talk about where they drink wine out of the human skull. This is something that should absolutely shock people. Charles Finney said that it horrified his mind that a Christian would claim to be a Freemason. And it seems we're so desensitized that the evidence of the skull bowls, we don't see the lesson that's teaching us, and the propagation in Freemasonry, just fallen angel rituals of the most brutal and inhumane kind. And yet it's nothing. Well, I can be a Christian and do that. People need to get a clue and they need to get a clue big time.
Just me kind of throwing this in here. Didn't the following also teach abortion and how to go about all that too? Because it kind of reminded me when you was talking about the skulls and everything.
Yes. Right in the 6th chapter of the book of Enoch, it mentions abortion specifically. Yeah, that's one of their biggies, and it continues to this day.
And then people, it just baffles me how people can go along this narrative and do these sinister things. I just can't even. So you just know the depravity, the reprobate mindset is involved. Plus, I've talked about this recently too. It seems like these things are hyping up, this whole transhumanism and all the little trinkets and tools and stuff. But we're talking about fallen angel technology being inundated on us with all this AI components and everything. And it's just, you mentioned that on the ride that last night with the World Economic Forum and their treaty.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's disgusting. It's disturbing on all different kinds of levels.
And very specifically, and we talked about this on the ride a couple of times, the Gali, and the Arch-Gallus, this is recorded in the Golden Bough, when they were the high priest over the Gallic people who, as I said, they came down from the Scythians came down, and when they came into the area of Asia Minor, they became known as the Gauls, where Paul wrote the epistle to the Galatians. And the Arch-Gallus would actually emasculate himself, and he would emasculate himself, and in the worship of the tree, he would literally sling his manhood onto the tree. This is where the red and green Christmas colors come from, by the way. And the Christmas balls, I mean, they're rightly named. They really are. This is the rankest, darkest paganism. And then this
wow, I never knew that.
The initiates into this cult, after emasculating themselves, they would go to a person's house, and that home would have to give them women's clothing to put on. File that under, you can't make it up. And they would have to give this man that had just emasculated himself women's clothing to wear. And this is just well documented in the Golden Bough. So here we have these Celtic and these Scythian skull cups. We see the influence of this culture there. And what do we have going on in America? We have the emasculation. They're grooming young children to be able and trying to talk them into emasculating themselves. And this was voluntary here in the Gali priesthood. They wanted to do that. And we're in the same situation here where that spirit is taking over our nation. They're literally causing young boys and young girls to literally ruin themselves. It's so sad and so pathetic. And it's a spirit. It's a spirit. It's not something they're trying to intellectually convince people of. There's a spirit driving this. And this is the ancient spirit of the Gali and the Arch-Gallus. And this is manifesting in the area because our nation has put up with it. We have not stood against these things in the spirit. We have not been prayerful against these things. And when we see these things like the mounds and with these skull bowls, it's just like an animal marking its territory. They come in and they mark their territory and they say, this is mine. And they have taken over, and it's rampant. And it seems like there's few and far between of those that are going to be able to stand up and be counted and call people to prayer to push back this evil, because certainly a little bit of spiritual warfare is in order right here.
Pino Clean removes different kinds of mess with 3 times multi-action power. Dirt? Tick. Grease? Tick. Excuse me. Food?
Guys, I didn't stream yesterday because the night before I mixed my meds and I got really sleepy. It was a bad move. I didn't mean to do it. But all yesterday I slept basically.
Tick. It's not clean unless it's Pino Clean.
Rest makes it simple to manage my super.
Even if meditation could be that simple.
Gimme!
Wash your ears. Rest. Super simple.
Quick, clear, zero drama.
Kilometers south of Carafa, at the existing Carafa airport in the Pilbara, Chinese communist-owned companies with the...
Well, I knew whenever the Roe versus Wade, I knew when all that was going on and they come to conclusion on that and the verdict on that, I knew that it was all going to just escalate from there. And I hate to be Mr. Negative, but it seemed like the spiritual, you could just feel it.
Shawnee, when I was a kid, there was no autistic children at my school. And I went to a pretty big school. There's a lot of students, but there's no autistic children as far as I can remember.
It just getting more tighter and tighter. And I knew something more nefarious was coming down down the path. The Bible speaks of it, but I mean, it's just,
oh yeah,
the stuff's just escalating, David. I mean, just speeding up, and then here we are digging up bones, digging up bones and going down these rabbit holes that nobody else will go down. And it just baffles the mind that the literature, the documentation, the scholars, they have everything was either written down or typewriter or anything. They have all this data. It's endless. There's all kinds of data. But like I said a few minutes ago when I was talking about inquiring about certain things in my local area, they changed the name, just like, when you mention Nimrod, Osiris, all these different names throughout time, they changed the name, but it means the same, I hate to say it, deity or being or Nephilim, or they're all the same creature or same being or whatever, but they do the same thing with the Indian narrative and prehistoric man, and they'll relabel it Indian, but it was an 8 foot, 9 foot tall Indian. So then they label it Indian, and then they don't even register that it's a gigantic stature. It's just unbelievable, David.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I'm getting those slides to you, by the way.
Okay.
So we talked about the Britannica Volume 6. Charles Finney. That's another. He's talking about Masonry.
Yeah. And I have Charles Finney's book here, The Character, Claims, and Practical Workings of Freemasonry. And Charles Finney, before he was saved, he was a lawyer and a Freemason. After he was born again, he wasn't either one. And he wrote a book against Freemasonry. And a lot of people today, they'll throw Finney's name around. They'll every once in a while, a preacher will quote Finney, but they won't go full meal deal on Mr. Finney. I guarantee you. Charles Finney, in this book, he says that the revival that took place in the 1800s in America, it was specifically because that the churches threw the Freemasons out. And I'll just read a little bit that for you. On page 265, he says, the murder of William Morgan and the publication of Masonry, consequent thereupon in the books I have named, broke upon the churches fast asleep on the subject like a clap of thunder from a clear sky. The facts were such, the revelations were so clear that the Baptist denomination backed down and took the lead in renouncing and denouncing the institution. Their elders and associated churches almost universally passed resolutions disfellowshipping adhering Masons. Now it is worthy of all consideration and remembrance that God set the seal of his approbation upon the action taken by those churches at that time by pouring out his spirit upon them. Great revivals immediately followed over that whole region. And the reason why the church purged itself of idolatry. And Finney talked about these revelations being so clear, and they are clear. I mean, how much do you have to ponder on whether drinking wine out of a human skull is right or not? And you see, today, the church talks about their phony baloney revival, but they don't want to repent. They'll have people that are Freemasons that will be leading their so-called revival meetings. It's not going to happen like that. There will be no true revival without repentance. And I've given up on waiting for that apostate church to repent. They're not going to. It's time to get out. And one of the clear revelations that Charles Finney talked about was the drinking wine out of a human skull. And on page 108, he quotes a fellow that was talking about the drinking wine out of the human skull. And it happens in the York Rite. It happens also in the Scottish. And he says, he's quoting this fellow. He says, I then took the cup, the upper part of the human skull, in my hand and repeated after the Grand Commander the following obligation. This pure wine I now take in testimony of my belief in the mortality of the body and the immortality of the soul. Here, in the most solemn manner, the candidate drinking wine out of a human skull takes upon himself this obligation under the penalty of a double damnation. Now, I would just say this to each and every church that will tolerate a Freemason in fellowship, that you need to just shut your mouth. Don't you even profess Christianity. Don't you even proclaim to be God's little warrior. You're an absolute fraud and abomination before God. And anyone that will support some assembly where these people run free, you're an abomination to God. You need to repent. Right? This, I mean, if we ever want to see a move of God, whether it's in whatever assembly it is, there has to be a purging of idolatry. And this is something that the apostate church has dug its heels on. They're going to keep the Freemasons because this is something that pads their pocketbook, but it's abomination to God. And this is one of the very things, this drinking wine out of
I think Elon Musk is behind the mark.
Human skull. This is one of the things that Charles Finney brought up to rebuke the Masons before the Great Revival in the 1800s. And I think that it's more than right and proper. I think it's high time for this to be brought up again.
Mm-hmm. And I'll bring this up too. It's just making my gears turn here. I'm just now getting fired up, David.
Yeah,
man. I started thinking about the berserk, the word berserk in giant narrative, and the cannibalism and all that. And it almost it's literally like they're continuing the traditions of the Canaanites.
Yeah.
I mean, am I wrong on that? It's almost like
it's nothing less than that. Nothing less than this is Canaanite fallen angel religion. And we can see the marks of that right in these earthworks and mounds right here in our area. It's 100%. It links up totally with the Canaanite, the Anunnaki. It's nothing less than that. It is the perpetuation of the ancient kingdom of Atlantis and the antediluvian knowledge dispersed after the flood through Babel, and this ancient priesthood, which we can identify many of the characteristics, and we can see this ancient priesthood right here in our area. And I think that's one of the reasons why nothing is by chance. And I think we are here for a reason, that we are here to draw a line in the sand and say, thus far, no more.
Amen. Well, it reminds me of Cain and Abel, the blood crying out. And it's there's a connection, there's some kind of connection there with, the ritualistic aspect of it. And the more blood, the more taunting the Father. It's almost like, the devil's got them right around their finger, right? The devil's really pushing. I mean, this is nothing under the sun, like I was saying. It's been going on for millennia.
I think the mark's coming, Shorty.
One would wonder, we're talking about the sons of God. We're talking about the giants, the giants, the Raphaim, will they return? The days of Noah, these things are going to return upon the earth again. And it's almost interesting how they're still continuing the traditions. Mm-hmm. And there's still, this is what I can't even get through my thick skull, but that we're still continuing these old traditions. But then there's this new age of thinking with all this advanced technology, but they're still continuing these old occultic knowledge. So one would wonder, it's going to clash. It's going to merge together one of these days. And that's the fallen age. It's all iron and clay is not going to mix. I think it's all going to clash together. And I think, honestly, the Masons, I think some of the ones on the lower end of the lower class ones, they don't understand what they're getting into. I know you talked about that plenty of times, a lot of broadcasts, and try to explain it, but I know they have to know something. When you're taking an oath to Beelzebub, or you're cutting your wrist on the Bible or the Quran or whatever you're doing, and you're in a pentagram, they have to understand that they're doing something nefarious, something sinister, something to that effect. Unbelievable. I'm getting ready to get some slides to you, David.
All righty.
But
that'll be frosty. That'll be frosty.
But yeah, it's something that you just can't make up. And people out there that have that are into these things, I'm not putting you down. I know David's not either. We're trying to expose the sin side of it, the sinful nature of it. It's we all have this fallen nature, but the thing is, when the Holy Spirit gets a hold of you, you know that you do wrong. You come to Him as an innocent child. You come to Him in that state, and I'm still learning myself. But these people that are doing these kind of sinister occultic practices, I pray, even though you're supposed to pray for your enemy, but I pray one day that they'll see it before it's too late.
Hey, Talia, good to see you.
Ways. I mean, I really am still holding out hope, David. I'm holding out hope for these people.
And guess what just happened?
What just happened, David?
Tracy Benet just came in here and fixed it to where I think I can see the slides now. So I think we'll be good to go on that.
Praise God. Sorry about that, David, but sorry about that, everybody. But we are back on track, and we'll get it rocking and rolling there, David. A little hiccup, but hey,
all righty. Very good.
All glory to God. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have in the other room, I have a Kentucky monitor for the Masonic monitor for the state of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And I could read things out of that. They definitively define Masonic as initiation as new birth. And I could read you stuff out of that would make any true child of God's hair stand on end. Mm. And that's the place where we're at. We've got to call these people to repentance. And it's idolatry. There's depth of evil in Freemasonry, but from the very first degree, Freemasonry is just horrifically idolatrous.
And I know the moral code. I know they have to know it's wrong. I have seriously deep down in their whatever's left. They have to have a consciousness to understand.
It's like the Jesuit
there must be so much financial gain in gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak. I hate to use that analogy. There must be so much temptation and the lust of the flesh just gravitate to it. It has to be. It's just. But anyways, it's just whew. Yes, that's a very heavy topic, and the whole skull drinking thing is so grotesque. I just couldn't imagine. There's certain cultures now to this day. I remember seeing a news anchor. I think it was on. I hate to use it on CNN. I think there was a couple years ago. I forgot the gentleman's name. He was literally drinking and eating from a skull. I just wanted to throw it out there. How sick! And they televised it.
Actual human flesh. He actually capitalizing.
Yes, and showing it, and then it plants seeds in people's heads. Like it's projecting and broadcasting a television. It's broadcasting, channeling. It's literally honing in and causing people to be conditioned to believe it's okay. I mean, it's sickening. It's just. But anyways, whew, man.
It is indeed.
Welcome to FOJC Radio Sunday Night Live. So the next slide, Clay City, Kentucky, David. This is kind of close to my neck of the woods. Yeah, what we have in front of us here, it's basically an archaeological survey that was done in the early 1900s. This is Clay County, Kentucky. We're going to be talking about Manchester, that's inside of it. But on the outskirts here on this slide, there's counties that are in circumference of this. From all the research that I have about 70-ish, I think it's like 74. And our state has 120-ish counties, give or take. Don't hold me to that right now, but about 70-ish military renaissance missions, archaeology missions that was done in the early 1900s. Well, it started in the late 1800s, but we're looking at Clay City, Kentucky here. The little circles, I'm going to zoom in on the slide, the little circles that are there, all these marks with the rivers, and what we're looking at here, there's 2 stone houses. A lot of these in Kentucky, there's some that are formed inside of mountains, which is baffling to me. because speaking of the Advanced Civilization by Frank Joseph that we was referring to earlier, when the Anasazi and the Hopi and the Hopewell and the Andean. Well, here's the kicker, David. No joke. In our area, which it shouldn't, there's Hopewell Indians and Andean all in through the Ohio Valley, Virginia, all that. But here's the one that baffles me. When you go out to Arizona out west and you see these stone structures that are actually built inside the mountain, and they inhabited them. And I wonder, I looked at it and I started thinking about this. I've looked at all these counties. Webster County, Webster, Kentucky, it's not too far from you guys, close to Fort Knox. They had the exact same setup. They would be on a higher elevation and they'd be forged into the side of the wall of like just a riverbank and literally have rock shelters inside the wall, like carved into the wall. And it'd be hot.
On our news in the last week, there have been a few people that caught measles. When I was a kid, everyone caught measles. It was a time to get off school with measles. But now it's the news. That's how bad it's got.
Our altitude. It's almost like they had a military advantage point. And one would wonder, what are you running from? And I had to question everything I ever been taught when I started going on this journey. I had to question everything that was ever embedded in my brain about Indian culture. I had to look at it on a different perspective. So when I started thinking about it and doing a lot of deep diving into the giant narrative, there's rock shelters just like this all over. We was talking about my county not too right at the beginning of the broadcast, but there's all these little indicator points here are burial sites. There's 7 sites with
Talia, I'll do that tomorrow. We got mine from around the world today. I forgot about that.
Just regular. They talk about it. I'll get the book out real quick. They talk about it in the state that it is.
Talia, now 5 kids caught the measles somewhere in Sydney. It made the news. Same as chicken pox. We all caught chicken pox. No bad side effects.
Just regular mounds, small mounds, but they have the other ones that's recorded that are bigger in stature. So what's so baffling about it? This area has an abundance of oil and gas. Okay, so this place. Let me read out of the book here. The Archaeological Survey of Kentucky by William Funkhauser. So there's a large mound. It's called Frogtown Mound. So they always talk about when they get in these farms, because they're doing this. This survey was taken the last bit of.
I'll go to Paul Begley now. He's got a guest on.
Maybe I can find his email that he's saying he sent. Sorry, folks. In here just a second. Normally, Pat. So you heard what he said. He said, my internet, I have full internet. But as you can see, his broadcasting capability is being severely hit. But he's saying, go to simplycleanfoods.net. Thank you. Use the code Begley.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Talia, I'll do this one, The Rise of the Nephilim Magic. I'll do that tomorrow because it goes 2.5 hours. So it's a good effort. So I'll do that tomorrow.
The last bit of data that I have on it was 1931. They said that they scientifically excavated and yielded as many bones and artifacts. Okay, so they talk about there's large number of stone graves. They talk about the creeks that you see on the screen here, Goose Creek, which is famous around here. We're going to be talking about this particular park, and this whole you just can't make this stuff up about these ancient languages that they have here in Manchester, Kentucky. They have abundance of materials that was found in these fortifications inside the mountains, inside these ravines. Stone graves, a lot of smaller mounds, and like I said, flint, copper, and they're talking about the prehistoric people. They said that in Clay County it was more, how did they say it? Let me reframe there. They said many mounds and graves near Manchester, but give no definite location for these sites. And Young, this is talking about Radcliffe, comments on the fact that remote counties as Clay and other counties have found many evidence of prehistoric occupation. So, David, when I found out that prehistoric man, prehistoric occupation, prehistoric habitations, they are talking about ancient giants. And it just, go ahead, Dave, elaborate.
Well, what we see here in Clay County in Kentucky, you have the Indian mounds, then you have these rock fortifications. Like you said, the same thing was there with the Anasazi out there in the western part of the United States. They built these fortifications and then they just mysteriously disappeared all of a sudden. They were just gone. We see the same thing by the Serpent Mound and all.
Okay, they've done this Serpent Mound quite a lot. Can we move on from the Serpent Mounds? You've pretty much done them to death, David.
Pile by the Serpent Mound is Fort Ancient. We see this right over there by you. By the Serpent Mound there's a fort on the top of the hill. And we see this even in the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall of China was said to be built to keep out Gog and Magog, who were the two giants. So, we have this concept, and all of the Indians talked about this ruling priesthood class that were a different race than them. They had red or blonde hair, they had blue eyes and white skin, and this priesthood of the serpent, the priesthood of the feathered serpent, as they would call them, they were a ruling class. And the Indians, over time, they would rise up and they would try to overtake and overthrow these people. But this is a constant, a consistent point that we see. We see it in China, and actually, I think it's probably beyond the purview of our broadcast tonight. But in connection with these round Celtic broach houses, I think that there was definitely a fortification concept there that was going on there.
Absolutely. And then, just kind of add to that, the fortification that's close to me in my area.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. Water-activated steam and cooling power with Smasher's Dino Egg Hunt from Zuru.
This makes it simple to manage my super.
I wonder if finding a shortcut could be that simple.
Rest. Super simple.
Do you know how amazing this razor is? In just 3 seconds, it can shave your beard smoother than your wife's skin without leak.
It is. There's a big sign. It says, it literally talks about the Hopewell Indians traditions and talk about prehistoric, and it says this way. It literally has a sign, but that whole fortification, I have documentation on it where I've talked about this on many broadcasts, but it kind of gets a little graphic. I'm not going to go too hard. It's PG here. When I found out that fortification, there was Indians that went against these prehistoric inhabitants. And there was I think it was a 53-foot slope that they built. So what they do, they would gather all of the Indians to this one area. So the prehistoric man would be up there with the higher elevation military vantage point, and would javelin or arrows, etc. And then literally they would all migrate and hoard them up in this 53-foot slope and slide down and hit the wall, and was able to gather them up. And literally, no joke, they would take lime, phosphorus, and a couple other stuff from the earth, and they would literally grind the bones up and plaster it to refortify it, David, to keep refortification. And then, miraculously, by God's grace, they finally was able to defeat this adversaries, and they went there for cataclysms, for bad hard winters, floods, etc. Right? So it's amazing, David. Mm-hmm.
It absolutely is.
This next slide. So we're still in Clay County, Kentucky. This is how the petroglyph was found. This one, you just can't make this stuff up. This is in Manchester, Kentucky, in Clay County. When I come across this place, I was baffled by the information on it. But we're going to get into
Hey,
it. I'm gonna
Diane,
slide
good
in
to see
here
ya.
and zoom in here. This lovely place, when I mean, I have to believe what is written down here, and I'm not going to, discredit it. But here we go. This is the famous red bird petroglyph, known since pioneer days and enrolled on the National Register of Historical Sites.
Wow.
On December the 7th, 1994, the historical stone fell from a sandstone cliff, which there's abundance of sandstone around this area. I'm just going to make that up.
Wow.
And rolled on to Highway 66. So, David, if you want to chime in there, Highway 66.
Wow.
I mean, this is truly astounding. This thing falls from the side of a rock cliff right onto the road. I mean, it is just absolutely phenomenal. And well, I'll let you go ahead.
Sure.
And talk about what was on this stone.
Sure. like I say, you just can't make it up. And it happened to be December the 7th, 1994. And we're going to get into it. This is a very interesting topic. So on the lower Redbird on December the 9th, 1994, it was transported here and set up in its home. It had 8 old world alphabets are engraved on it. Okay. These alphabets were extinct when Columbus arrived in the New World in 1492. This is what gets me a little upset, because when you look at the military applications and Squire Boone, I'm not putting anything down that they put out in their documentation, but it's baffling me that they have to always put in something to do with Columbus or whatever. But and they'll literally tell you here in a second. They're telling you exactly. You can go here. As far as I remember, this park was open 24 hours daily. I couldn't believe it. It was as of 2022 or 2021. I don't know now, but yeah. So the alphabets are 1st century Greek and Hebrew, and Old Libyan, Old Arabic, and let's see. And I'm lost my place there.
The Iberian.
Oh, Iberian Punic, which probably dates from the 9th century BC, Ogham, Germanic ruins, and Tevnifican Nubian are also on this stone. Of all the hundreds of important translatable and published inscriptions in the U.S., this is the first one.
Diane, if you hear Mike from around the world, come on. Will you give me a heads up? I just checked him not long ago.
One to have been given official protection. Clay City and the city.
Box 33, West Lafayette, Indiana. West Lafayette, Indiana, 47906. 47906.
I think he's on the bite for money.
Some folks are saying they're having some volume problems. Others are saying theirs is just fine. It shows here I'm maxed out pretty well. So, wow. I'll check and see if there's any settings.
Okay, Mike's not there, obviously.
Clay City and the city of Manchester have granted protection to this stone. In doing so, they have obtained a good name and public esteem worldwide. What do you think about that, David?
Well, this is not maybe so proof. This is absolute proof that before Columbus, there were people that came to America, and they have come here from, thousands and thousands of years before Columbus. And these languages, there's no way you can make this up, where there are 8 languages that were extinct when Columbus came to America. And here they are on this huge stone right here, not very far from where we are right now. And this thing just fell off the side of a cliff down onto the highway there in 1994. I think maybe the father wants to reveal some of this stuff. And there it is. I mean, and this should absolutely shape to the foundations everything that's being taught in history classes in high school, college, wherever. It's irrefutable proof that what we're saying this evening is true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, and what's really cool as far as I couldn't believe how they at first, whenever the stone was there in 1994, it was just I think it was on a slab or however they had it set up. But I'm going to show another slide here. They finally put like an awning over it. It's just wood, but I think they had people, they used to have people be able to come up and touch it. But now they've had to pull everybody back and they've put a perimeter around it. It's a barrier. They won't let you touch it. And it makes you wonder, why would you, all those years went by, and that wasn't that long ago when they put the barrier around it. I just thought that was so interesting. So if you want to look it up, everybody and all the viewers here, if you want to look it up, it's called the Stone of Witness, a red bird petroglyph, Kentucky State. It's Kentucky City Park, Manchester, Kentucky.
Yeah, you can go right down there and look at it. And that Ogham language, and there's a lot of inscriptions of what they call the ancient Ogham. And Og, the king of Bashan, this is
I was just about to say King Og.
right there from the foot of Mount Hermon. And it would make sense, you know, if you have people, what happened at the Tower of Babel, as we all know, the languages were confused to where they could not communicate with each other. Now, it might make sense that these people will say, well, boy, let's get all of our languages written down together on this stone so that if anything would happen again, we can communicate and understand one another. It would make a lot of sense why people that had undergone the judgment at Babel, that they might be concerned with doing something like that. But this is undeniable, in your face proof. This is still there. You can go look at it. And it's just absolutely phenomenal. And we don't realize the huge impact of the things that we have just right here that are just absolute confirmation that we do indeed have Atlantis right here in America, and these ancient signatures of this ancient antediluvian civilization.
Absolutely, David. And then, you know, there's another slide here. It actually shows you on the same setup when they put the barrier and everything around it. It actually shows you the languages. I mean, they've already depicted it, translated it. I mean, they put it on a nice little billboard there for you. It talks about the first century Christian monogram in Hebrew and Greek letters, Christ the rock, the temple cornerstone. If you want to elaborate on that we could go on that just all day long on that particular one.
Yeah, and there's just so many things here that would not be here if indeed Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. And if that was the discovering of America right there, we wouldn't be seeing the things we're seeing here on the stone right in Kentucky. You can go look at it.
Yeah, and it says the Ogham, the right hand of God, sun disk, inscription to Ra, the Egyptian sun god, is carved here by Nile mariners. It talks about Ra, and I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, here we are, and I have to ask you a question. I'm gonna pick your brain on it while we're on here. I'm just now waking up, everybody, and we've been an hour in the broadcast. I have this kind of. Just like we're having coffee at your place, Dave, I have a question for you. How in the world, back in 1994, how in the world 2,000 years ago, let's just say 3,000 years ago, how did 8 different languages get up on a rock on a high elevation and then come crashing down on Route 66 in 1994 of December the 7th? And how did they was able to have and set up there and carve in it 8 different languages if there wasn't 8 different cultures? Just think about it. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, where do you get that from? I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, we've got irrefutable proof here. This is a slam dunk. This is a slam dunk.
Yeah, I mean, and the Ra worship too. The Ra, and just the Egyptian. We're going to be talking about that here in a little bit more Egyptian stuff. I mean, you just can't make it up. The next one, Atlantis in America by Lewis Spence.
Now you do it.
All righty. Here we go. Yeah, Atlantis in America. And that's pretty much where we're going tonight, Atlantis in America. And there is tremendous, as we say, I mean, it ain't just one thing or another thing, it's a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But on page 99, Mr. Spence said this. He said, I wish in this chapter to adopt the natural science method to try to prove that the seeds of the art of mummification came from Atlantis and were broadcast to Europe and America. And usually when we think of mummies, we think about the Egyptians, don't we? And the Egyptians, the same ones that transmitted the story from Solon to Plato so long ago, and that where they got the understanding of the stream, Plato called it, this stream from heaven of heavenly cataclysms that made these civilizations extinct. And what the Egyptians claimed that they got their knowledge of mummification from Atlantis. That's what they say, that they learned this from Atlantis. And what we see and what we're going to be bringing forth here is to show that right here in this Indiana, Kentucky area, that there are mummies that are distinctively done.
Diane, I had a couple of mates show up for a weekend about a year ago, and we went to play pool at a pub, and they wouldn't let him in because he didn't have photo ID. Just spewing.
Just like the mummies in Egypt, just like the mummies in the Pacific Islands and in Peru, and on and on and on, that the prehistoric Kentuckians and Indianians, if you will, that they had this knowledge of mummification, and that this is another distinctive mark that indeed those survivors from Atlantis, a lot of them landed right here.
And like we've talked about in private conversations with the mummification embalming process, that would be done in Peru is done in cave systems like not too far from Mammoth Cave, Glasgow, Kentucky. I mean, to me, it's just there's one or two things here. It's either they migrate here or there's something more at play here. We could go into down a rabbit hole of portals. You know, here we are talking about 8 different languages as previous before this slide, or something to that effect. Or there's tunnel systems that reach, which that's a theory of mine. I think I think that if you really want to get into some deep dives when it comes to the way the Earth is shaped and the way the formations are, we get into Argentina. We can go into all that as far as the tunnel systems. I think I've even asked some guys that does cave climbing and everything. They refer to that they're able, even up your area, like in Marengo Cave. I asked a very specific question about Marengo Cave. Could it be possible, if you had the right equipment, could you possibly make it, if you could survive it, get to Kentucky, in the Mammoth Cave? And the gentleman said yes, but it would be unbelievably dangerous. But yeah, I digress. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's just, to me, we've been fooled on so many things. For people to be down there in a cave system, do a mummification process, the way the deer skin and how it's all handled, like you're referring to, it has to be taught. And there has to be an origin from it, and I think it's what you're saying.
Okay, and why did they do the mummy? Why did they do it? Explain why they done it. Surely they don't think it's going to be resurrected.
Mm-hmm. This was a highly developed technique. It was very specific. And I have a little book here. We did make a slide on it. I'll just hold it up. It's called The Mummies of Mammoth Cave. And if everybody can see that, an entire book written about mummies found where in Mammoth Cave and in other areas down there. And not only did they find mummies, they found mummies that were mummified with the specific practices of the way that it was done by the Egyptians and in the South Sea Islands. And this came from somewhere. And I believe that Mr. Spence is absolutely correct, that this knowledge came from the Atlanteans. And that's where the Egyptians themselves, that they claimed they got this knowledge of mummification, was from the people in Atlantis. And there's another whole concept. We were talking about someone the other day that their body was never found. It was Attila the Hun. Me and John were talking about that, I think just last night on the ride, how his body was never found. Well, I think and this is just my idea, you can take it for whatever you think it's worth, but I believe part of the intent and purpose of mummification was for the reanimation and cloning of these entities at a later time. I think that's exactly what we're looking at. And in the very root of the word Rephaim, the word Rapha, it means to heal or reanimate. This is like H.P. Lovecraft, the reanimator. And I think that this is the basic reason behind the tremendous obsession with developing this art of mummification to such a high degree.
Absolutely, David. Speaking of ancient Egypt, I've looked and took a deep dive into, looking at the way things are forged with the arrowheads, javelins. There's a certain way things was made in ancient Egypt. Okay, so we're talking about the Nubian culture, the Nubian, like we get into a Nubian warrior narrative. And I looked at, there were certain arrowheads. I've seen arrowheads in Kentucky. They have their crystals. Some of them are made with iron. Some of them are made with just granite. I mean, it's unbelievable. Some of them are mixed. And I started taking a deep dive in that. And not too far, there's an it's called Old Indian Fields. And on the plaque, Commonwealth of Kentucky, it says in Indian language, it says Eskapakakiki. Eskapakakiki literally means, it says kintake. It means it's derived from the word kintake. Well, kintake, if you look at it in ancient Greek, it's konvoki. And konvoki means, and it's a Nubian warrior. And on the plaque at the Commonwealth of Kentucky in the Indian Fields in Kentucky, it's just a flat out piece of land. It says a warrior's path. And I thought it was interesting. Hello. We got Nubian warriors. We could go down a huge rabbit hole with the Phoenicians and everything. But I think we have all this stuff from ancient Egypt. And I think it's what you're referring to with the whole Atlantean narrative. I think it's just one big, it's been a big playground for thousands of years. And I think the Nephilim, the Raphaim, have been pushing these agendas and building civilizations and trying to get men to bend at the wheel. You're going to refer to the Anunnaki and all that. There's all this stuff.
Wow.
That has been trickling down into mankind, and that's where we're falling to. And I think the whole sinful state, and we're seeing the results of it in 2023.
Wow.
It's being turbocharged, and the things that have been are getting ready to come back. That's my opinion.
They might be.
Diane, so he walked into a setup. Who's the guy that does that from Newsweek or something? What's his name? He gets all the predators in as a trap.
Really getting ready to come back.
Am I doing this broadcast? Oh, yeah.
With Vodafone's.
And Diane, the photo of that pastor, how come all these guys always look like creeps? Whenever they're charged with this sort of stuff, they always look like creeps.
High-speed home internet plans. You come face to face.
Like they walk into Australian jail, we'd pick them at once.
With speed that'll blow you away. Supercharge your home from just $55 a month for 6 months with the broadband provider of the year, Vodafone.
They say a smile lights up the room. With Invisalign, it's like flipping a switch.
That's it. Catch a Predator, Chris Hansen.
I'm sick of being welcomed.
I actually watched that guy, and I also watched Steve Wilko's show because I like to see justice on these buggers. I shouldn't say buggers, these bastards. Like Steve Wilko's, he gets people on that have been done time for it, and sometimes they're innocent. But if they're guilty, the coppers actually come and arrest them. Not on the show, but a lot of people have been arrested from Steve Wilko's. And I like to watch that to see someone get justice after years. We hate pedos in jail.
Our own country. Labor and the coalition want net zero.
Yeah, that one definitely. Anybody go get this book, Atlantis in America. It's a darn good book. I just had picked it up not too long ago. So Lewis Collin.
Diane, he's got his own show on YouTube. Chris Hansen.
David, the Collins Historical Sketches of Kentucky. Man, if you can find this book has it's stacked to the hilltops when it comes into Kentucky historical documentation, prehistoric habitations, all this stuff, prehistoric man. This book has got the kitchen. You can throw the whole kitchen sink at it. It's packed. It's jam packed with information. So,
yeah. Now, and this book was written in 1875, and when we just realized that in 1875, this was the official history of Kentucky. But you never know it now because it's absolutely a different story that children are being told about the history of the state. Now, we'll just read a few things here. This is on page 388, and it talks about the way that they held the tobacco plant to be sacred. And then it goes on to talk in great detail about the mummification practices of the prehistoric Kentuckians, as they would call them. And it says that a devout and enlightened appreciation, this is on page.
Diane, you're talking about Steve Wilkos. He's a serious, he's not like Jerry Springer and that. He doesn't have lunatic bogans on, or as you say, hillbillies. We call them bogans.
388 of the.
I can't stand Jerry Springer though. That's all they do is scream.
The virtues of the sacred plant tobacco was the soothing and propitiatory incense which was offered to his gods. The prehistoric Kentuckian was.
Yeah, Diane, Chris Hansen's got his own show now on YouTube. I don't know who's sponsoring him, but he has things on YouTube now. He's still doing it.
Familiar with the art of embalming. Now, this is another really amazing.
That'd be a good ride. If you're a young guy, say 2021, you could set these guys up. Yeah, you could set these guys up, all these kid tamperers. I would have done that as a kid too, set them up.
Fact that cannot be explained away. In Egyptian mummies, it is a fact that tobacco has been found in Egyptian mummies. And according to what we're told, there was no tobacco in Egypt at that time. Now, this is just another thing that is an undeniable link and a pointer here between the mummy.
Diane, I reckon that's Trump trying to get ahead from the crash of the dollar, because now Saudi Arabia is trading without American dollars. Your dollar's going to be pretty weak. I wonder if Trump's doing all this to get in front of that, because it makes sense.
Vacation practices here in Indiana and Kentucky, with those in Egypt and all over. Mm-hmm. They go on then to connect the Kentucky mummies with the ones in the Pacific Islands. It says travelers tell us that the natives of the Pacific Islands interred their dead in a sitting posture and practiced a method of embalming similar to the American, the body being preserved by essentiation without moving.
Yeah, for what purpose though? Why are they mummifying these bodies?
Removing the entrails and wrapped in voluminous folds of clothes. These embalmed remains, says Bradford, resemble closely the mummies found in Kentucky caves, both in the method adopted for the preservation and in the wrapping of the mummy cloths. So, this is just read them and weep. It is what it is. And for people that want facts and want truth, all of these boxes are checking. This knowledge of mummification that the Egyptians claimed came to them from the Atlanteans. It was done in the Pacific Islands. It was done in Kentucky. It was done in Peru. It was done in Egypt. We have here a knowledge that was disseminated over the entire earth, and it came from somewhere. And I think the Egyptians were right that it came from Atlantis. And I think there was a purpose behind it. this is fallen angel knowledge, and I believe that that's what the fallen angels were all about. They were wanting to fix some way to where they could come back and to where they could one day reanimate. And this is just such a deep lore in the psyche of the humanity. And I remember as a child watching the Boris Karloff Mummy movie and the tremendous impact that had upon me. And there's just something down within the heart of hearts, this whole scenario there. The mummy comes back. How much has that story been played on? And you know, this is so easy for people to believe because there's truth behind all of this. And I think this is the purpose. It's DNA. It's bringing back the fallen ones and taking this fallen angel knowledge to where they're literally at the point of takeover. That's literally where they're at.
It's interesting too. Kentucky used to be a main resource. My family used to raise tobacco. It's vibrant. The ground's vibrant for it around here.
Yeah. And that could be one of the big reasons why, because tobacco was a sacred plant to them. And this was their most sacred plant. And this could very well be one of the reasons why they chose this area. And something else here that is in this Collins History of Kentucky, it says certain shellfish, murex, found in an ancient work near Lexington are said to be identical with the species which is sacred to Mahadeva, the Hindu Neptune. So here we got this Hindu god worshipped with a very specific type of shell. This shell is right over there in a pagan site in Lexington. You cannot ignore with the
Diane, I reckon Trump's done a coup. Not in a typical sense, but in the way he's come in and just upended everything. I was hoping he'd do something like this, but I didn't expect him to go this far. Hope it works out.
Sound mind, the fact that points us to there was a worldwide civilization that was antediluvian. It was very advanced, it was very intelligent, and it was based upon fallen angel knowledge. And we can see the dissemination of this culture right here. I mean, it is in your face. There are facts. And also, what else is just terribly, terribly clear is that they are wanting to cover it up because obviously this would give total credence to the story of the Tower of Babel, total credence under Genesis 10:25 of the days plague, the earth was divided. And like Plato said, there has been a stream from heaven that has destroyed many civilizations and through the judgment of God. But we have just an amazing ability to, you know, and the Lord wants these things revealed. It's just like, boy, there in 1994, let's just drop this. They ain't gonna miss this. We'll just drop this rock down on the road, and there it is. And let's see if they can get a clue out of that.
Sure. And then there's also mummification. Speaking of mummification, there's a sarcophagus. There was literally a pristine. It was early 1900s in pristine shape, a sarcophagus, and it was, from what I gather and when I read, it had an Egyptian. It looked like it was from Egypt, and that was buried, David, in a mound not too far from here. So we're looking. So how in the world do you even get that technology over here? So we're looking at there's more than, I hate to use the word. Well, I'm going to use that. There's more to it than more than meets the eye. I hate that saying, but there's more to it than what's been told. Absolutely.
And I'll just read, and yet, like you say, boy, this Collins history can get you going. It really can get you going.
Go ahead, David, get it going.
And on page 391 here, and you know, we talked about the Scythians and the skull bowls that were found right over there in Clay County, Kentucky. And this came from the Scythians, who came down from it came from Gomer down into the grandchildren of Noah, Gog and Magog, and they became the Scythians. And this is from the 1875 history book of the state of Kentucky. And they didn't tell you in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered this. But this is what they said. It says, others variously ascribe the original peopling to the Atlantis. I mean, they actually said in this 1875 Kentucky history book that the original people that inhabited were Atlanteans. And it goes on to say to the Atlanteans, the Egyptians, the Hindus, the Tartars, the Celts, the Polynesians, the Hebrews, and the Welsh. And here again, we have the Tartars and the Celts. And these are the people we spoke of previously that had the practice of making the bowl out of a person's head. And these pagan customs have been folded into secret societies. And there we go. But I mean, this is something we need to understand. The more we can understand.
Wow, he's appointing Soros agents. Wow, that's pretty bad.
The situation and the principalities and the powers we're dealing with in the area, the more effectively that we can pray. Because it doesn't matter that society and all of our institutions are being overrun with lies. The Lord omnipotent reigneth, and truth will find a home. And this truth is such that, I mean, it's undeniable in my mind. I don't see how anyone could rationally dismiss it. It is right there and it's in your face. We absolutely, we have Atlantis in America. We sure do.
Absolutely. And then in the same book, it refers to Delaware, and there's these the Indians. They've come out of Allegheny. I think it was the Allegheny Wall. I think it's the Allegheny River, if I'm not mistaken. They would say that they came from the water. That's the origins. And I looked into it and dug a little bit deeper into it. And no joke, it gets into the Louisville, Kentucky narrative, and they went to war with each other. They referred to the bloodbath that went on down there. But
yes,
I want to tie all it in. There's huge connections with the East Coast, and they came down to this state and went to war. And still, they was taking women and children, and they was going all over the place. And they went from here. This Ohio Valley was an outpost, was like a hub, a main hub of abundance. That's why I was kind of trying to make it clear earlier. Abundance of materials, and they would move further out. They would go out westward. I mean, they go to war. It was a bloodbath for sure. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that took place not far from here at all, not far from me or you. There, it's right where the Indiana-Kentucky border, and there's a bend in the Ohio River there, very near Louisville, and there's an island there in the middle of the
Sheepdog peanut butter whiskey is for humans. Rich, indulgent peanut butter whiskey adds a cheeky twist to any occasion.
Of the Ohio River there, and this was like the base of these giants. And the Indians got together and they overthrew and they slaughtered these giants there. And I've read that account in more than one old history book. And that's what you get. All of these Indian tribes, whether the Cherokee or the Anasazi, there was always this priestly class of giants that enslaved them. And that's the way it goes all the way back to the area of Galatia. All of the Galatians weren't giants, but there was this ruling class of the Gali that they were about a foot taller than the average person. They were a race of giants, and they enslaved and ruled over the people and kept them in bondage to religious superstition and doctrines of devils. And that is exactly what we see. It doesn't matter what Indian tribe you want to study, you get the same story. And the same story, that build fortifications to defend themselves from these entities. And it is such a consistent pattern that we just can't rightly ignore it.
Absolutely. It's just the evidence is it's stacked to the hilltops, literally stacked to the hilltops. You're talking about higher elevation. We're giving a lot of higher elevation content tonight. So yeah, we still have more. We still have more, folks. So hang on to your seat. But yeah, there's one other thing I want to throw in there. A Star Fort connection. I still think that's ancient antediluvian. Because I've read about Star Forts, they would tear them down and try to basically redesign them, re-engineer them, but there would be original sites. And then you look at that, you would look at based off the data, you would see it, and it looks just like we're speaking of. The giants was roaming around and they was trying to set up fortifications. That's when, in the whole I think I think it goes into the Tartarian narrative, Russia. There's a lot of things we could go down a rabbit hole, but I think there's a lot of ties to that, the military applications. But that's why, too, when you look into Atlantean technology, when you look at the Atlantean, the emerald tablets, and you go down a big rabbit hole, 6 fingers, 6 toes, tall, so-called little G gods that would rule. And then we're going to do that for a later broadcast, but I just want to throw it in there. Absolutely, David. Atlantis, there's a big connection to Atlantis all the way up down the Ohio Valley. Absolutely. Next one, Zimmerman.
All right. Now, this is the book is Fritz Zimmerman. It's called Mysteries of Ancient America, Uncovering the Forbidden. And this just has some really, really compelling things in it. And on page 124 and 125, he talks about the blonde and red-haired mummies, as we mentioned. He also goes into that, the ones that were found in the caves, and also in the Kentucky History by Collins. He says most definitely that these mummies, they were blonde-haired and red-haired, that they had blue eyes and white skin. That they were definitely not Indians. And something here that's very, very profound, on page 43, he talks about a serpent mound that is in the Mound State Park in northern Indiana. And there's a serpentine mound, and this is really wild. It's even like in the water. So this looks like a snake swimming in the water. It's really wild. But what's interesting here, and I'll just read his words. He says, one of the springs at the bottom of the bluff is high in iron oxides, coloring the rocks a deep red hue. Iron oxides were symbolic of the female menses and are associated with rebirth of both souls buried in mounds and the resurrection of the sun on December 21st. Here we have the connection between the worship of the host of heaven, between the pagan holidays, and this menses is so profound and significant because this takes us right back to the Anunnaki. This goes back to the practice that came right down from the fallen angels of the actual partaking of the female menses for the perpetuation of the bloodline. And this is something that is talked about. I'll read just a little bit here from The Realm of the Ring Lords by Lawrence Gardner. And we have talked about this on previous Midnight Rides, but now what we can do, we can tie this practice right here to Indiana and to Kentucky, that this was a big part of the ritual here, because this is the continuation of the serpent, the feathered serpent priest that we can see. We can see this. We're going to connect the dots. We're going to connect it from Israel to Ohio to the Indiana, Kentucky area. And in what Mr. Gardner says, this is on The Realm of the Ring Lords, and this is on page 188. And he talks about the Anunnaki starfire.
Good night, Phil.
And
God
there
bless,
are
mate.
many distinctive, undeniable connections between the priest cult that was here in our area and the Anunnaki, and this is a huge one. It says, he says, the original starfire nectar of the Mesopotamian times, often called the plant of birth, was fed to the early Grail bloodline until about 1960 BC. The menstrual flower was the designated flower. Menstruum contains the most valuable endocrinal secretions, particularly those of the pineal and pituitary glands, which heighten the qualities of the intuition, awareness, and perception. And that's why we see in these Hindu-looking statues marking the third eye. That's why we see in the Olmec statues, we see the V. There was an actual V on the skull of the jaguar, and this was impressed upon the child by a V in the masking and the wrapping of the head from the earliest times. And it says here, the starfire maidens who produced the menstrual rasa designated the vehicle of light the lunar essence. And this, of course, was regulated by the cycle of the moon. And we're going to show everyone just another amazing connection with a temple that was found right down there in Kentucky called the Temple of the Moon, and where there's undeniable artifacts of this priest of the feathered serpent that is right there.
Yeah, and one thing too, just throw it in here. I studied the Wellington tablets. Different tablets have been found with the Indian mounds in this area in Ohio, and we've talked about that off air. There's something to that that has a spiritual application, absolutely. But what was so baffling about it, David, whoever wrote those and draw those and carved those into the tablets, they had the longitude and latitude right where they buried it, inside engraved into the drawing. It was so, we're talking about astronomers. I mean, they would not understand. I can't even imagine. Like whoever did it, these Indians, whoever did it, had the knowledge of the constellations. They understood astronomy on a higher level, astronomical level. I mean, compared to a guy with a telescope, these people was on a different level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And right in the Collins history, it talked about tubes that were found. And what these tubes were, they were devices that were used for gazing at the stars. And it's quite possible that there was actually some very sophisticated things at one time in these tubes. They were telescopes, is what they were, for observing the stars. And it is it's just right there.
Well, one thing go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and this is something that the Collins history said of the prehistoric Kentuckians, that they were very much educated on the alignment, just like all over, like the Great Pyramid is aligned as above, so below, with the Belt of Orion. The same thing with all of these earthworks we see all over the world, and specifically in our area, there's the alignment with the heavenly luminaries. They're very intelligently and precisely laid out. There is
Whenever you're getting ready, we're here for it, with cold bevies close by.
There is nothing that is left to accident in any of these.
Absolutely. I was just going to throw in there I started looking into there's some folklore between like meteorites, comets, and there's a strong connection with giants. They talk about giants coming down from the heavens, from the windows of heaven. It's weird. It's very strange. It's a lot of folklore out in the Ring of Rogar. We'll talk about their future broadcast, but
yeah.
I saw some meteors that fell in Spain, not personally. I've seen them on YouTube, and you could make out demons in the flame. You really could. Where it landed, the bush caught fire, and you'd really see a demon in it. You really could.
Literally, it would come down, hit the ground, and no joke, they still have the impact crater, but there'd be a mound literally not even yards away, feet away, and you just can't make it up. I mean, there's some huge connection, kind of like especially what we're bringing to the table here with these telescopes and all this astronomical stuff. There's something in the Draco. We could talk about the Draco constellation with the Serpent Mound, all the constellation setup. It's unbelievable. You can't make it up. It just fits like a glove.
It sure does.
Yep. Next slide. Mary Sutherland, the Gods and the Giants priesthead. A little bit. The giant gods, giants, and ancient man of the Appalachians. Forgive me.
Yeah. Do we have the slide of that head we can show folks here while we're speaking to it?
The one on the Zimmerman?
Yeah.
I sure do.
Let's just throw that up so folks can look at it, so they'll know specifically what we're talking about here.
It is up, David.
All right. And this head was found in Kentucky. It's an 80-pound head of the ancient, they call it the ancient feathered serpent priest, which the undeniable similarity with Quetzalcoatl and the what we see all over the world. Yeah, there it is. And on the right side, if you was looking straight at it, what is depicted there is a feather. on the right side of the head of this feathered serpent priest. And this was found by a temple. And the temple is called the Temple of the Moon because of the way that this is aligned with the movements of the moon. And again, we reference the fact that there in northern Indiana in Mound State Park, we have the Indian mound. Well, it's not a mound, it's a serpent formation that looks like a serpent swimming in the water. And that the red iron ore there is symbolic of the menses that was used in these rituals. This is Anunnaki stuff. This goes right back to the Anakim, the Anakim of the Levant. There, this is the whole Genesis 6 scenario that we're looking at, and this is right there in Kentucky, the Temple of the Moon, and this 80-pound head of this feathered serpent priest. And it was certainly the Temple of the Moon because this is connected with that ancient ritual and the very disgusting one of that in which these people would partake. And it was about the bloodline. You know, the reason why they believed that this would perpetuate and strengthen the bloodline. And that's what we've got. We've got this ancient fallen angel priesthood that certainly it goes back. It didn't just start then, it goes all the way back to the antediluvian world, and it goes back to this amazing place that was called Atlantis, that was destroyed and has fallen under the judgment of God. So absolutely, there's amazing definitive correlations here that show us just exactly what was going on here.
Wasn't it in that same book with Mary Sutherland? Excuse me, the Mary Sutherland, wasn't it? Am I correct on this? The 900-foot snake that was engraved into the mountain, or like in the.
That is exactly
okay.
Right. And
I have the slide. I have the slide for just the picture of the title of the book, Gods, Giants, and Mary Sutherland Priesthood.
Yeah, This is on page 101. I can hold it up here. And
let me zoom in on your face there, and you can hold it up, David. Go ahead.
All right, I'll see if we can hold this up.
It's crystal clear, David.
All right. And what we have here is a huge coiled rattlesnake that is carved into just a mountainside near Cattlesburg, Kentucky. And guess where the head of the rattlesnake is pointing? Right to the place where the sun will be at the summer solstice. Now, this alignment, this not only was a pretty good job carving this coiled rattlesnake out of the rock, but it directly aligns with the astronomical alignment.
Thanks, Don.
And this is the snake cult. You know, this is the snake cult. This is the serpent cult. And this is absolutely goes.
I'll slip over now. With a bit of luck, Di, we'll get a song. Okay, there he is.
To a point now to where the human race has the capability to devastate itself with weaponry.
Well, Paul, Dale Simmons just said before we end this, Dale, he said time, space manipulation, and that's what Trump said a couple of days ago.
Yep.
The military now has the capability.
I think we might have dodged this song. I'll rewind it. Hang on. Not really.
To manipulate space and time. You saw that?
I saw that, and I told my wife, I said, Heidi, they just announced they can literally manipulate time and space. Because time and space actually are synonymous. I mean, you know, but if they can manipulate it, does that mean they can slow it down?
Or speed
it up?
Go back and forward.
How?
Before an event happens. In other words, Russia attacks. Like, they go back a couple of days and blow Russia off the map.
Oh, whoa.
Whoa, right. And Trump, what was the other thing? He said nobody knows what it is and nobody else has it. I'm not saying that's exactly how it would be used.
But that could be.
Wow.
It could be for.
He's talking about a time? Wow.
I was going to say, I mean, is that time travel going back? I mean,
all the movies that talked about it.
Yeah,
Also Hollywood.
And also, by the way, Nikolai Tesla, he was working on a time machine. And, you know, it was Donald Trump's uncle.
They got his
who got the
manuscripts.
files on behalf of the CIA or the FBI, I think it was. He got it.
He was the only one that could interpret.
And that's why that book, Baron Trump's Adventures, was written in the 1890s, and the last president being Trump. That has to be time travel, guys. How else could they have done that?
Yeah.
Was his name Frank? Or something like that. Frank, something
John,
like that.
Was it John Trump?
Could be.
It was John
Trump.
Trump.
The reason he got the thing because he was the only one that could interpret what Tesla was talking about. And that's kind of a line of geniuses in itself there.
True.
Which you go back to ancient technology, you're talking about a whole different story.
I mean, I think that, and don't quote me, guys, but Einstein, his theory of relativity, but he also was the one that focused on time and space and the laws of time and space. And so he theorized this, or he understood this, but we didn't have the technology to do it. And I think Tesla actually figured out how you do it, but he was too old at that point, and so then the United States got their hands on these files and have probably been working on this for 40 years, and now Trump is saying we can do this, and I'm just blown away by that. I mean, some people, the media, it just went over their head. I mean, the talking heads at CNN, they don't even know how to report on that. They didn't even report on it because they can't. They're
worried about one dude that got shipped back to his country.
Oh, I know.
And I would, if I was Trump, and I'm just off the wall, the Trump or the press secretary, I'd say, never mention that name again. He's never coming back. Shut up.
Yeah. You're wasting my time.
That's all you hear about.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a distraction in the news right now.
Yeah. But we're talking about these 3 days of darkness now, and I mean, this happened. Okay, this is why I want to bring it.
Guys, so that guy, they say Trump accidentally deported to Salvador, however you say it. Did he have a bad criminal record? Do we know anything about his record?
Listen, it is the 9th plague of Egypt. It happened once. It says the darkness was so thick they could feel it. Okay? Now, it happened once. And it's going to happen again, apparently, because throughout the Bible, it talks about the day of the Lord. It's going to be like with thick darkness and gloominess. And then another scripture says the sun will be darkened and the moon will turn to blood. And then, I mean, it's throughout the scriptures and prophecy. So what could happen?
I'm like Mike about that, about volcanic ash.
Yeah.
Block,
wow.
Because that's physically what you and I can see.
Yes.
And
feel. And you could feel it. Yeah.
Well, Diane, they're clever crooks, aren't they? Attack them by building a tunnel. Wow, that's clever.
Yeah. And has seen in the past, it's not some concept that we're trying to create.
No.
It's a real, and because of the heating of the earth, Paul, and the openings that we're seeing, these volcanoes.
Shawnee, I admit I don't know much about if they time travel or not, but they do have a lot of things that we don't know they've got, like the Philadelphia experiment. They could put that in another dimension and bring it back. So if they can put things in other dimensions, you muck around with time, they're in other dimensions. So, and apart from that, remote viewing is the same as it's in the Bible. Thou shalt not be observers of time, and they do remote viewing, and that's usually accurate.
Volcanoes are getting ready to speak.
Hello, mate, what are you doing?
Yeah, they are. And if this one, can I ask you if the one up there, I forgot the name of it in Alaska, it's near Anchorage.
It's not Mount Thor, but or something like that. THUNE or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, and it again. There's you can go and actually choose the volcanic link that we use and everybody uses, and they have models of where, if it goes, where it will spread through Canada and into Washington, Washington State, and down into California through there.
Mount
So,
Spur.
Sure, that's it. That's it. And so what you're seeing is increased activity and the history of it.
Yep.
And they know what's going on. All the scientists are not telling us everything they know.
No. Well, let me ask you this. We had an earthquake that shook San Diego.
Yeah.
And you know, Mike has talked about San Diego eventually is going to be an earthquake that's going to raise it up and tilt it 45 degrees and slide it into the Pacific. That plate's going to do that. Well, and so that earthquake hit, when it hit San Diego, the U.S. Geological Survey showed 7.0. And then they changed it to 6.7. And then after about 20 minutes, they decided 5.2. But I talked to several people in the San Diego area, and they said, man, this thing shook their house.
Wow,
Doors swinging back and forth, windows opening. This was quite a quake.
They're trying not to panic the public.
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do about it except keep the taxpayers at bay, calm down.
Yeah.
And don't quit paying taxes. But not only that, don't riot, we've seen that in the movie 2012, that 25-degree tilt.
Yep.
Remember that?
Yes, I do.
In the helicopter escape scene, or the airplane escape scene, I think it was. And they were letting us know then of what the capabilities were.
Yeah.
But that's a dangerous fault zone. But what did happen when that quake hit, Paul, was there was a gap, and you can go back on time. It wasn't a 9-hour opening in the shields, but it was probably for about an hour that it came through. And I think I know I did a video about it. I don't know if I sent you the info about it, but there was an opening, or maybe I commented in your video.
Yeah, you commented about it. Yeah.
That's what it was. There was an opening then, but it was a minute opening compared to what we went through yesterday.
So this 9 hour, is it closed now? That 9 hour open, is it 5?
It's closed. Well, it was a few hours ago.
Okay.
I could, and what it was unusual about it. Normally you've got a line, a chart with a line in the center at 0. If it goes above it, it's a plus 5, 10, or 15. If it goes below it, it's a minus. But both of them were immediately for 9 more hours stuck above it in the positive. There was no balance. It was all exactly the extremely close polarity. So, and that was unusual, but it made the solar wind speed and the temperature and the density go back to semi-normal comparisons.
Okay.
As far as that. But I would have to close this out and go look at it right now.
No, don't do
but
that.
It was closed today, and that may be why some of us are getting some relief. But Paul, there's an opening on the sun, and it's called it's an opening in the what they call a coronal hole.
Yes.
And CH is how they abbreviate it. Anyway, it's giant. It's southern hemisphere. It covers about half the sun. It's about to rotate full scale broadside to the planet, and all that does is pump solar wind stream to the planet. Because when you see those openings, that means there's a lack of the solar canopy, and that canopy is magnetic. It's like
Watch what eggs do to your.
See those solar openings. It's like a clear sky. But the canopy on the sun, the cloud cover, captures the energy and transfers it back to the surface in those big loops that you see. Wow. But with that opening, it just pours straight at the sun, and there's a giant one, big as a quarter the size of the sun. And right behind it is a group of sunspots that I put it in the video earlier today that are going to come into play right behind this immense coronal hole.
So when is the coronal hole going to get?
It's there. It's here now, Paul. I'm
is
just
it
waiting
direct?
for
Is it? It's so it can happen any moment.
Well, yeah, it's probably picking up our solar wind speed. Now, I tell you what, let me change something real quick if we got a moment. And I'm going to look.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing on my computer. So hold on just a second.
Folks, our guest tonight is BP Earthwatch. And we're talking about 3 days of darkness, but we're talking about also the incredible release of energy from the sun and the fact that our magnetosphere had a massive hole, open for 9 hours. and maybe why a lot of you had incredible nausea, dizziness, massive migraines, immense pain, especially in the neck area, and maybe just your whole body for all that.
Shawnee,
No, and
Bank of America unloaded $1 billion about a month ago. Diane posted something about it, so they know something's coming.
and so we're discussing that. I am going to play a little bit of Mike Around the World as well.
Paul, the opening, it just opened back up, Paul.
It just opened back up.
I'm glad you kept talking to me and forced me to get off my butt and go over here. Because now the red line is back and dropped below zero. It's about a -10, and we're seeing a pretty good opening right now as we speak. It's +10. Right now it's +11 at the top, -10, so we got a 22-degree opening. That's very large. And it's almost as wide as what we were seeing for 9 hours, and it just reopened. The solar wind speed is just, let's see it, right now we're at 419 kilometers per second.
Yeah.
The temperature is raising, the density is dropping because we're getting ready to see an increase in the solar wind speed. But the opening is back, and the tilt of the planet, or the tilt of the angle of the solar wind hitting our planet, has also changed. But we are now, Paul, if you want to look at it, I can give you a very quick link, but we're back into an opening right now. So guys, get ready.
Yeah.
The fortunate thing right now, Paul, is most of your listeners are in nighttime.
Yeah.
So the effects will start happening as the sun rises.
So people will start experiencing migraines, severe
everything. Now in Europe, you probably have people in Europe where it's sunrise and where it's daylight right now. They're going to be getting hit. The auroras tonight, which I thought would be very weak, are going to now be much stronger in the U.S. and in Alaska, because that opening is back and it is nearly as wide as the 9-hour one, but it's only been going on for 30 minutes, it looks like.
All right, now BP, there's a corona hole, as you mentioned earlier, right now on the sun. I'm looking right at it. It is absolutely the largest one I've ever seen. It's in the southern hemisphere of the sun as it's turning toward us.
I think that's what's hitting the shield right now, Paul. I said it in a moment, but I think that's what we're seeing. And that's going to last for about 14 days. Because it takes 27 and a half days for something to rotate around the sun.
Yeah.
So for 14 days, it's facing the Earth.
That's the most dangerous situation we could be in. That hole is gigantic.
It's pretty large, and you got some filaments that could throw some CMEs at it. And if you notice it behind that opening, Paul, do you see that circle?
Diane, gold is going through the roof. If I knew how to buy gold and I could trust the place where I get it from, I'd invest in gold because it looks like a good deal. And also silver. Silver's pretty cheap at the moment.
The spot roof coming through?
Yeah, I do.
There it is. So we're going to have this continuous stream of the solar wind from the opening, and then whatever bursts come right behind it. And right now we're seeing that solar stream. I think that may be what's opening this up. Now, again, we've got a few hours to prepare because it will be like the movie Riddick. When the sun rises, you're going to start to see the effects. Tell Heidi.
I'm going to tell her. I'm going to tell her
about that. And, if I had more time to study it, I'm just going to say this. I've got a metal roof. And I built my own home, several of other houses I sold, and did the electrical wiring and the grounding. If you had a metal roof and you would connect, it's all connected because they're overlapped, a couple of inches in the 36-inch section of metal roofing. If you could put a screw a hole in that roof in a couple of places on the edge, a bolt and a good ground wire like you would put coming out of your power with a ground rod, that would transfer a good bit of that energy
to the ground,
penetrating to the ground, Paul. And then that would be like a $30 fix, not a fix, but a hill.
Yeah.
You would have to,
but you need a metal roof.
Fully metal building with the walls and the ceilings grounded in as much metallic type
like 4-volt insulation on the inside as you could get, like a Faraday shield. And I'm thinking I'm going to do this tomorrow because I have the ground rods. I have 3 because I have electric fence to keep the huskies off the highways.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. If the weather permits and the Lord lets me.
Yep.
Is I'm going to drill a hole in the edge with a metal roof. Listen to what I'm saying, guys. And you got cable clamps that'll run it right down to the ground, just like you do out your meter base. So you can hook it. If you do it next to your meter base, Paul, you can use that existing 8-foot ground.
Oh, that ground, that rod.
Oh, that's hell to put in, boy. Yeah. That's it. You'll never get it out, but it's hell to put in.
Yeah.
But, anyway, that's just one semi-Faraday thing, but the interior rooms away from windows, the basements, things like that, storm shelter,
yeah,
may help. But we're getting to that point, Paul. We're going to see heat. We're going to see darkness. Then what happens?
What about wildfires? Is there going to be droughts from this heat? And is there going
sure,
to be...
yeah. Look at what happened. It is, and there's going to be 2 types of wildfires. The democratic style and then the natural style.
Okay.
Or the Chinese style, the paid-off democratic Chinese wildfire.
And
just like Japan sent the fire balloons over during World War II.
Yep.
You remember that?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, well, by the way, they're trying to end. They've got that thing going on in California right now. Did you see that where the balloons are going up? A group of Democrats in California are launching sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere to color the sunsets, they're saying. It's got a name. Someone in the comments may know what it is, but look it up. But they're right now, Trump is trying to shut that down. But
why are they doing that? Why in the world?
They to make it more colorful sunsets, but it's blocking the sunlight out and it's changing the weather. Someone would look up. I don't want to change my computer.
I can look it up.
The balloons, sulfur dioxide. I think it's sulfur dioxide balloons that are being launched. It's like a side company, but they're democratically controlled of weather control manipulation, but under the guise of we're going to make your sunsets nice and clean.
This is crazy from the green people.
Yeah,
are messing. Yeah, why would the people who the Democrats?
Because the demons tell you the exact opposite of what they're doing. That's why they call them green.
All right, so it's biodegradable. They say latex balloons with a mix of sulfur dioxide or SO2 and the helium or hydrogen gas before releasing them. As the balloon rises, the decreasing air pressure causes them to expand until they burst, releasing their sunlight reflecting payloads. They make it sound so pretty, but it's really.
Hey, Shawnee, good night. God bless.
Changing the weather over the Pacific Ocean, and that changes the weather over the United States.
Who's doing this? I mean,
it's the Green Group. It's a bunch of demons that are doing it under the guise of making your sky pretty. That are manipulating the weather on this planet.
It's crazy. It's crazy what's going on. It's getting crazier. Is there something wrong? Is some kind of pressure on the brain?
Yeah, Tally, I don't know enough to invest in gold. I wouldn't know if they're getting a lend of me and ripping me off or not. So I'll just be happy with what I've already got.
People.
It goes back to the flat earth theory, Paul. A bunch of them were dropped when they were kids on the top of their head, out of it, and they come up with a flat earth theory, and they can't realize that what we see is the glorious manifestation of the creation of God. And all these satellite images, who would go to the trouble to show all the images of the sun to fake a flat earth? But anyway, I think the flat earth thing is part of the flat head thing.
If they drop their heads, they have flat heads, so they believe in a flat earth.
That's the only thing I can come up with, Paul.
Well,
Or the mother was flat, or both. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what did it. Yeah, I think you got. Yeah, it's a.
I
needed a good laugh.
You've flown at over 30,000 feet, like I have across the
Yes,
country.
I have many times.
You've seen the curvature.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And matter of fact, if you're ever on a boat, guys, the curve is every 9.9 miles. If you're a sailor, you know what a captain knows, and that curvature is at 9.9 miles on the ocean.
Yeah, it curves.
In
a plane, you see it curve, from the 35,000 feet.
Yeah, and look at the surface on the ocean. I can approach the islands, different islands, in my sailboat.
Yeah.
When you get about 10 miles, you just see the top of the trees.
Yeah.
When you get a little closer, you start to see the bottom of the tree,
right,
and then the beach and all that's the
that's because of the
curvature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And,
common sense would tell you, okay, why do I only see the top of the trees? If you see it, you should see the whole tree. Why would you only see the top of the tree? It's because the Earth's curvature. Yes, I know.
It is. It's such a glorious creation that people that believe that are missing out on the beauty of what our Father has created. The stars, the SDO satellite.
Diesel.
No one can recreate that or even imagine it to recreate it in AI. It's just the beauty. I think it's the demonic to try to take away from God's creation.
Yeah, to steal God, try to steal God's glory of what He's created, the glorious world that He's created for us.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how we got there, but we got there. But
yeah, we got there. We got those.
Check out this, guys.
But I didn't just chemtrails.
Sit
Remember
there.
when we used to talk about
I'm looking after my cousin's dog. Look, he's a big mastiff. Look at him, Adelaide, mate. He's a good boy.
Now it's okay. They shut our channels down over less than that, and then every time a conspiracy theorist, folks, is a person who tells you the truth 15 years ahead of the media.
That's right.
That's really what that is. The liars are, and I'll be honest with you, the media today is propagandists. They're just propaganda puppets for the New World Order. They've sold their soul to the devil. They'll lie when the truth fits better. They're so crooked, you have to screw them in the ground if they do.
Tell you, he's my cousin's dog. I got 2 cats here, and he gets on okay with the cats. They were a bit scared at first, but now he's got no problem with them. He's a gorgeous boy, aren't you, mate? Yeah, you know it.
Aye.
Gorgeous boy.
That's what my daddy says.
Would it be at an angle or straight down?
It's going to have to be at an angle and a lot of threads because they're crooked. But
well, if you go straight down, it's going to have to be deeper than 6 feet, or their heads will pop out the top during the rainfall.
BP, I'm having too much fun. Oh man. But anyway, hey, thank you so much.
We got to laugh in the face of disaster ball.
We got to, yeah. Thank you so much tonight for coming on and really, and this is what a breaking news here that this 9-hour opening on the Earth, and then it closed, and then I said how long, and then you go back and look, and it just started up again in the last half hour.
Look at spaceweather.com, top left. There's people say discover satellite call, and you'll see it for yourself. Spaceweather.com has it. It's one of the links. You don't have to go to our site.
No, I'm already there. I kind of basically keep it. Oh, I see Discover Lake. Okay, so if I click on there,
it'll give you let it.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Oh, wow, I see it. The red line. Yeah, that red line fell off the deep end.
Yeah, that's it. We're opening the info. Before we hang up, I want to say 12 or 13 years ago, on November 28th, 2013, you and I were talking about Comet Iceland.
Yeah.
And this fellow called in.
Yeah.
Strange sounding fellow.
Good boy, D's.
Yeah.
And Paul, you said, what's your name?
On top of the laptop.
Paul, you said, where are you from? There was a hesitation in a couple of seconds. And I said, from around the world.
From around the world.
Yeah.
And that began that.
So what was that date? What's the date?
November 28th, 2013. It happened to be when the iSun
Comet Isaac.
exploded behind the sun like I said it would when everyone said it was going to hit it. I said, no, it has multiple nuclei and it will explode. And it did.
Yep.
Big old Winston
But anyway,
Churchill.
Mike called in November
Winston
28th,
Churchill.
2013. I think that was the first one.
I think it was,
And
because I
he made
remember
a
that.
comment that he made a comment that I kind of took as a redneck comment. He said, how in the world does that guy sitting down in the cabin in the middle of Mississippi know that? But I've gotten that my whole life. I've been in California talking about recording studios, and Paul, they say, y'all have recording studios in Mississippi?
Mississippi?
I said, yeah, man, too. You ever heard of Elvis Presley or B.B. King?
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's the, anyway, that's my.
Well, let me ask you a question, because it's amazing you got the date, and it's been 12 years.
It was my birthday too, by the way.
Was it really?
Yeah. But it was
do you remember? I know you remember. You interviewed Mike from Around the World once, or I can't remember if you interviewed.
Check him out. He's on his belly. Look.
Ran with it.
He wants me to pat his belly. Look. Has he got a big belly, eh? He's got a big belly.
But you took that.
Look at him. He looks like Winston Churchill.
It was the first time.
Hello. Hello, guys.
And you begin to do some research on that.
Look at him, the slob.
I mean,
He's kicking me. Don't kick me.
It was a storm.
You're
People had
supposed
never
to
heard
kick
the
me.
term 5 waves of energy.
I remember him talking about it. I'd have to go back and look at a little more information.
Get off
but
the
I
bed. You're
definitely
messing up the
remember
laptop.
That was one of the main things he talked about, and the red skies and
Good
going
boy.
on from up there. But during that time, and it may have been, Paul, when I did what was called the Jupiter wind.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
I do remember that.
And we're talking about a gravitational type slip that may occur when we have a comet coming up in 2029, a big one. Called Adolphus.
What's the name of this comet?
Adolphus.
He does. He does, Diane.
Yes, the big one. But they're saying that if it does, it will not hit the planet unless there's a gravitational slip.
Are you talking about Apophis, the asteroid?
If I bought a bull mastiff, I'd call it Churchill because they look like Winston Churchill. I'd call him Churchill. That'd be a good name.
Not Adolphus.
Okay. Yeah, that's coming on Friday the 13th, April 13th, 2029. And this thing is 3 football fields wide. I mean, this is a big rock that's going to come. They think, the last calculation they said was 18,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. That's closer than the satellites that are.
Right. DirecTV is 22,400 miles.
There you go.
Right. That's exactly right. We've seen it now, but what happens when you get that close? When you get that close, then you have the gravity of the Earth to figure it in. And we've seen it curve many times on the
just had him on the bed here,
after
guy.
they've gone by, I've seen a curve
Showing
of the
off to the
projection
guys.
of that asteroid or comet change because of the gravity of the sun or the Earth changes the outgoing orbit. The other thing is something that large normally has a lot of company with it. Smaller, but a lot of company. That's right. But the gravitational slip, I know it exists because I saw it during iSun, and what I did, I had a chart that.
I remember last week, Paul said, or Mike said, he might not be able to come on today. Doesn't look like he's coming on.
I recorded of the magnetic north pole of our planet.
Okay.
And it was drifting off to the right. You've seen how far it's drifted, right?
Yep.
But during November 28, 2013, that thing took a left turn, 90-degree turn for several miles. The magnetic pole of our planet shifted during the gravitational blockage between our sun, when it was between our planet and the sun. And it changed the gravitational north pole of our planet. The magnetic north pole.
So let me ask you.
It's in a video. If I could find that video, Paul, going back that many years, A couple of my channels have been taken down and some of the videos there. You know.
Well,
But I remember it clear as day.
okay, now that you know that so is Apophis, is it bigger than Ison or smaller?
Well, it's hard to now. They're two different things. Ison was a comet.
Right. Ison was a comet, and Apophis is an asteroid. Right.
It's much smaller than Ison, but it's solid. It's a denser object. And it's coming, Ison is millions of miles from us.
This thing is coming within naked eye distance.
Under the satellite, under the direct TV satellite.
Right.
And that's without a gravitational tug.
And it's going to get a pull from the Earth, isn't it?
Good. I can't say for sure, but that's what I'll be watching if the Lord is still letting us watch anything at that point in time. We may be sitting in that 1,000-year millennium with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ teaching us under what I hope is an oak tree in the shade, and for 1,000 years telling us what the difference is, telling us the truth.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're right. I mean, we're only 4 years away. Actually, this is April the 17th. It's coming by April 13th. Okay, in 2029. So it's 4 years away, folks. We've been watching this thing for about 20 years. But it's coming. And if the Lord wants to return and set up the millennial reign, I'm not going to stop him. I can't stop him anyway. So I mean, I'm in.
Well, yeah, I think probably the most current thing we have to watch is the heat from the sun.
Yeah.
Because Heidi knows. I mean, what can we say? Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
And if it gets worse than that, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
If you ever had a warning for this nuclear asteroid comet or anything that we've ever warned about earthquake, nothing is more widespread and earth-wise affecting than what we're talking about with this solar activity.
All right, BP. Well, hey, hope you feel better, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing this very vital information. Very, very vital. I appreciate
it. Thank you, sir. You're welcome.
God bless you, BP.
God bless y'all.
BP Earthwatch, folks. He's just a great guy, and he's smart. Dude is smart. Forgot about it. Hang on a second. We're going to bring Mike around the world.
Brain. Take a look at these two brain scans.
What?
They both look again.
Brain scan. Let's again, I played this early in the broadcast. For those of you who just joined us, Mike Around the World is not going to be here. The first time in 12 years that he.
Okay, I didn't think so. Hang on, guys. Oh, man. That's what I wanted. I'll finish with this guy, guys.
Welcome to the Watchman channel. This channel is all about world news and Bible prophecy, pointing to the soon return of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am asking that if you can, to please help to financially support this ministry. If you feel led to pledge any amount of money, it would be extremely helpful and greatly appreciated. There is a PayPal link in the description box and in my pinned comment below. You can also donate using Cash App. My cash tag is $Watchman 1963. Thank you all so much for your prayers and support. God bless. Jesus said, as a sign of his coming and the end of the age, there would be an increase in deception, false Christs who will deceive many, wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, Christian persecution, apostasy, false prophets, and lawlessness, causing the love of many to grow cold. Jesus said all of these signs would come like birth pains. Jesus was likening last days events to a woman in labor. As the labor progresses, The pains increase in both frequency and intensity until the baby finally comes. As we get closer to Jesus' return, all the signs he gave us as a sign of his coming and the end of the age will become more frequent and more intense. All of these signs are manifesting around the world in our time.
The U.S. military is maintaining its pressure campaign on Houthi terrorists in Yemen, launching hundreds of strikes in the last month on the terror group that is supported by Iran.
For the past 32 straight days, the Trump administration has carried out nonstop airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen, an effort to stop the Iranian-backed proxy from firing ballistic missiles and drones at commercial ships and U.S. Navy vessels in the Red Sea.
The operation continues, and it will continue in the coming days until we achieve the president's objectives.
March 17th was the last time the Pentagon briefed the press and the American people, 2 days after the president's ongoing military operation against the Houthis began.
The initial wave of strikes hit over 30 targets at multiple locations, degrading a variety of Houthi capabilities.
But the Houthis keep firing missiles, shooting down at least 4 American MQ-9 Reaper drones, which cost more than $30 million each. U.S. officials confirm a 5th U.S. Reaper drone crashed on Sunday. The Houthis claimed responsibility.
The drone was downed using a locally made surface-to-air missile.
The USS Carl Vinson, a 2nd aircraft carrier strike group, arrived in the Middle East Thursday, deployed from the Indo-Pacific Command. 6 B-2 stealth bombers capable of dropping America's largest non-nuclear bomb were deployed to a base in Diego Garcia and have been striking Yemen, dropping 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs since the beginning of April.
It sends a clear signal to Iran as well. You're not going to mess with the United States. Iran, come to the table, negotiate full dismantlement of your nuclear capabilities, and then that doesn't have to be your future.
The U.S. has carried out more than 500 airstrikes in Yemen since March 15th.
The U.S. and Iran will continue negotiations over the nuclear program this weekend. Israelis are concerned about conflicting messages coming from the U.S. Special Envoy.
Meanwhile, Iran is encroaching on an ancient Christian enclave in Iraq. The move is putting thousands of Iraqi Christians at risk.
With the U.S. and Iran scheduled for more talks this Saturday, many in Israel are watching with concern.
I think the central concern or the big unknown is whether or not the Trump administration is going to insist during these negotiations with an uprooting or a total dismantlement of the nuclear program infrastructure in Iran.
According to U.S. mediator Steve Witkoff, the initial talks focused on how far Iran could enrich uranium. Later, he seemed to walk that back on X. A deal with Iran will only be completed if it is a Trump deal. Iran must stop and eliminate its nuclear enrichment and weaponization program. Lapine says negotiating over enriching uranium goes down the same road as previous administrations.
But it didn't take apart the nuclear infrastructure, those underground sites and their centrifuges in Natanz, in Fordow, and other sites across Iran. You know, what Prime Minister Netanyahu described as the Libya model, which is really destroying the very ability to enrich uranium and not just freezing the enrichment uranium process. That's the concern. That's the big unknown.
The Bible tells us there are 4 possible prophecies on the verge of finding fulfillment. Isaiah 17:1, in which Damascus, Syria, will be destroyed in a single night. Jeremiah 49, the prophecy of Elam, which could infer an Israeli attack upon Iran's nuclear program. Psalm 83, in which the Muslim nations that border Israel will mount an attack on Israel in order to cut them off from being a nation. Ezekiel 38 and 39, known as the War of Gog and Magog. In this prophecy, a coalition of nations led by Russia, Iran, and Turkey will attack Israel in the last days in order to take Israel's wealth.
So 2 American aircraft carrier groups are now in the Middle East. The USS Carl Vinson joining the USS Harry Truman as President Trump warns of a possible military strike on the table to keep Iran from completing its work towards a nuclear weapon. His special envoy, Steve Witkoff, meeting with Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, in Amman over the weekend. The president says that more talks are set for this weekend but he says you have to keep your options open.
If we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facility?
Of course it does.
Of course it does, says the president. With that, we bring in retired Four-Star General Jack Keane. Tell us how you view where the U.S. and Iran are right now with all of this.
Just a few weeks ago, the supreme leader of Iran was refusing to go to negotiations at all. His advisors, what we're told, convinced them that they should. And what's motivating them? Well, number one, their economy is in the tank. Their currency, the rial, is really spiraled out of control, and they got inflation somewhere in the neighborhood of 30%. The second motivation is obviously the ultimatum that President Trump has issued to them, which is if you don't dismantle the program, then something bad is going to happen. You're likely going to be bombed. These are his words. And what that really means is an Israeli-led, U.S.-supported airstrike, most likely. So here comes Iran. And I am stunned by these guys, Martha, because they have a playbook that they opened up again, and it's to replay the negotiations they did with Obama in 2013 that led to the disastrous 2015 deal. What am I talking about? They're saying, look, we'll reduce all highly enriched uranium we have down to a very low percentage like we had back in the so-called nuclear deal, the JCPOA. In other words, we're not going to build a nuclear weapon. We're just going to use it for civilian commercial nuclear power. Of course, that's a bold-faced lie. They're thinking the Trump administration is going to buy this. After all, in 2018, Trump pulled out of that very deal. And then in 2019, when the North Koreans did not dismantle their program after saying they fully intended to do at a meeting in Hanoi, Trump got up and terminated the meeting and walked away. So here they are trying to convince the same administration, obviously with some new players, but the president is key here, that the fact that we're going to lower the enrichment and just use it for civilian power is a distinction that no longer has a difference. Because why? 10 years later, the Iranians can manufacture using advanced centrifuges highly enriched uranium very rapidly. So they could go to a secret site if we agree to that deal, rapidly build the capability they have right now, where they're weeks away from having 6 nuclear weapons is what analysts think they're on the path to. So here they are putting it in front of the Trump administration, something that they are replaying from the Obama administration. It's not going to work. What's on the table is dismantle your program, give up the materials, destroy the deep buried secret sites, no longer use ballistic missiles to be able to deliver these systems, stop your malign and aggressive behavior in the region. That's what's on the table from the United States' side. And if not done, then the obvious is going to take place, that there'll be some kind of a strike on their nuclear enterprise. The administration doesn't want to do that. They would like to end this peacefully. But I don't believe the Iranians are going to go along with it.
To try and prevent his own destruction, Satan seeks to eliminate the Jews. This hatred manifests itself in the book of Esther, where wicked Haman tried to eliminate the Jewish people. This hatred manifests itself again, as we read in Psalm 83:4. They have said, "Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more." What the world doesn't understand is that this is a spiritual war fought in the physical realm. Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Satan hates the Jews with a passion. He hates them because God provided both the Bible and the Messiah through them. He hates them because God called them to be his chosen people. He hates them because God has promised to save a remnant of them. He hates them because God loves them. Satan works overtime to plant seeds of hatred in people's hearts toward the Jews. He is determined to destroy every Jew on planet Earth so that God cannot keep his promise to save a great remnant. He tried to annihilate them in the Holocaust. He failed. He will try to destroy them once again during the last half of the tribulation. He will fail again.
That is
John
true.
15:18 through 20. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Yet because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you.
Iran is not only threatening Israel, but tens of thousands of Christians in northern Iraq. Nadine Maenza is the former chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom.
Well, unless the United States intervenes immediately, the historic Christian city of Karakash in the Nineveh Plains of Iraq will fall tomorrow into the hands of U.S.-sanctioned Iranian-backed militia leader Rain Kildani. So Kildani has already ousted 14 other mayors and directors from the Nineveh Plains.
Maenza wrote a letter to President Trump that the White House has a powerful opportunity to protect the Christians of the Nineveh Plains during Holy Week.
My understanding from people on the ground and in the government is if the President of the United States or Secretary of State Marco Rubio called the Prime Minister Soudani of Iraq, that he would likely put a pause on this, and there would be further talks about what could happen going forward. So we just urge the White House to intervene and talk to the Prime Minister of Iraq.
Tens of thousands of Christians in the Nineveh Plains celebrated Palm Sunday, but Maenza says this could be the last stand for Christians there without immediate intervention.
Karakosh is what's the thing that may fall right now. It's the religious center of the Nineveh Plains. And if it falls to this Iranian-backed leader, the Christians won't feel safe. Many have left already. Many more thousands are planning to leave.
Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Afflicted is the Greek word thalipsis, which means pressure. Matthew 24:9 can be translated like this. Then shall they deliver you up to be pressured, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. This is exactly what we are seeing all over the world today.
In yet another unimaginable massacre on Monday, Muslim gunmen mowed down over 40 Christians in Nigeria. Dumisani Washington, an expert on Christian persecution in Africa, joins us now. Dumisani, we talked last week about 60 Christians being killed. So if you're thinking this is the same video, it's not. This is a separate video about another massacre. Dumisani, what is going on?
And Raj, less than 2 weeks ago, 50 were killed in Nigeria, right? So this is a completely separate one from that. What's happening, Raj, is it's connected to a much larger narrative, which has to do with a global Islamic caliphate. Sometimes people hear that term and they go, oh, that's a fairy tale. No, this is real. The Islamist groups, whether they're Boko Haram in Nigeria, right there, right, Al-Shabaab in Kenya and Somalia, Hamas in Gaza, right, the connective tissue is this Islamist vision of basically subjugating everyone who does not bow down to Sharia, who does not bow down to this interpretation of this Islamic faith.
So Dumisani, the pushback would be, you know, in Gaza, it's not religiously motivated, it's an occupation. In Nigeria, it's a land dispute. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, it's about rare earth minerals. But you're saying that this is part of a larger narrative, correct?
All of those things can be true at the same time, Raj. In other words, yes, does Hamas want Israel destroyed and they consider it part of their land, if you will? Yeah. But the heart of that is not about land. It's about they're saying we want to kill, not just destroy Israel, but to kill all the Jews in the diaspora, right? They're committed to this global mindset of destroying Jews, Christians, and others who don't subscribe to their beliefs. Unfortunately for us, Raj, particularly in the West, those other issues, as you brought them up, they become the distraction. As you may remember, the article I sent you last week, we didn't touch on it, is from Newsweek, is a young man from Nigeria. He said during the Biden administration, they said the problem was global warming, right? It was because of climate change, right? Climate change was the reason why they were coming and taking land. And all these are the things that they throw out to Westerners, hoping that we get distracted by that. But the real issue, this is a religious war. And for us Christians, we understand this is what our Jewish friends would call Amalek. Amalek, which was the tribe that wanted to destroy Israel from the weakest and the smallest to everyone else. This is what's going on right now, but they want to do this across the globe.
Dumasani, obviously you talk to a lot of folks in Nigeria. You've been sending me different contacts to reach out to. But what do you want my friend who's watching this right now to know unequivocally about what is happening in specifically Nigeria?
What they need to understand is that this is a war against Christians, a war against what we would call now religious minorities, because up until just recently, Nigeria was a majority Christian nation. So I want especially the Christians to know, Raj, to be praying for their brothers and sisters there. They are facing horrific circumstances. I'll give you a quick little story. About 2 years ago, was in Washington, D.C. for a meeting with Nigerian leaders, as well as others, to discuss what was going on. There was a young lady who's over this foundation of a young lady who was kidnapped during the whole Bring Back Our Girls thing. Roz, we were at a dinner table. She began to speak. Just this wonderful person. She just broke out and cried. She said, Nigerians are scared. So what she said, that what's happening is that Nigerians across the state are getting more and more concerned about their safety because they see it getting worse and worse. So Christians really need to be praying for our brothers and sisters there in Nigeria.
John 16, 1-3. These things I have spoken to you, that you should not be made to stumble. They will put you out of the synagogues.
I'm out after this, guys.
Yes, the time is coming that whoever kills you will think that he offers God service. And these things they will do to you because they have not known the Father nor me. Service is the Greek word latria, which means ministration of God, i.e. worship. Muslims kill in the name of Allah, thinking they offer God worship. The Bible tells us they do it because they do not know the Father nor his Son, Jesus Christ. Here in America, we are not facing persecution to the point of death as of yet, but we are being pressured to accept the sin of homosexuality and transgenderism, or face being kicked out of the public sports arena.
A Vermont Christian school gets its day in court 2 years after being banned from state athletic events when its girls basketball team refused to play the biological male in that video. This is what their coach told Fox and Friends First exclusively last year.
I've also filled in for the boys coach when he can't make a practice, and I run those practices. And boys just play at a different speed, a different force, than the girls play at. It's a different game. So I would never bring my girls to a boys practice or have the boys come into our practice and say to them, hey, we're going to scrimmage today. We're going to go game speed, because it is just asking for an injury.
Joining us now, Mid-Vermont Christian School girls basketball coach Chris Goodwin and Alliance Defending Freedom attorney David Portman. So Chris, tell us, we know what happened. You and your daughters have all played. You're the coach. Your team decided to go to a Christian school that, or the kids do. We don't want to play against this team. It's not safe. Boys play at a higher level, as you said in that soundbite. And then what happened?
Right after we forfeited that game, our playoff game, we voluntarily ended our season, fully anticipating to pick up next year with the first game of the season. But right after we forfeited that game, the state of Vermont removed us from all state athletic competitions, not just girls basketball, but every sport we offer at the school. We are not allowed to play in the state of Vermont. Right?
All of them? And you wanted to win a state title, so they're taking this away from all of the athletes at your school.
Yeah, that's the goal every year. We've been pretty successful, especially on the basketball court over the last few years.
David, you've said that Vermont has a record of discriminating against religious schools and their families. Tomorrow, the case will be heard in the federal appeals court. What can we expect there? It is Vermont, after all.
It's incredible because we've seen this play out from coast to coast situations in Connecticut with the track runners, volleyball out west. And so this is just another one of those situations where school districts are taking this wayward political agenda and punishing anybody who dissents. And in this particular case, the school followed its religious beliefs, which happen to coincide with biology, that boys are boys and girls are girls. You would think that would be common sense by now. But the punishment meted out on the school for voluntarily forfeiting one game already had the penalty of being removed from the tournament from that loss. They accepted that. But then the harshest penalty ever meted out by the state was to remove them from not only all sports for the girls, but all sports totally. And you imagine any school that every single sport was taken away would be devastating. And so the argument tomorrow is going to be focused on this is a free exercise violation. It's a penalty against the exercise of religion. There's been hostility from the state for years. This is the fourth time we've had to sue them on similar issues.
So far, we're 3 for 3. So hopefully tomorrow we'll make it 4 for 4.
Brothers and sisters, persecution is here. Believers in Jesus Christ believe in the authority of the Bible.
Okay, guys, I'm out. God bless.
We believe homosexuality is a sin and marriage is between one man and one woman. We believe in the sanctity of life and that abortion is murder and is a sin. We believe God created us male and female and it is a sin to identify as a transgender. We believe Jesus is the only way to heaven and that believing in any other way will send a person